31 Public Laws of 1975. Adequate notice of this meeting was provided via fax to the Herald News, published on April 11, 2023, and placed on the City Hall Bulletin Board by the Office of the City Clerk. Pursuant to the Open Public Meeting Act, be advised that the City Council of the City of Passaic has rescheduled their April 25th, 2023 City Council meeting to Thursday, April 27th, 2023 at 7 p.m. to be held in the Council Chambers, first floor, 330 Passaic Street, Passaic, New Jersey, in person and virtual through hybrid communication equipment in conformance with the directives of the State of New Jersey. Please be further advised, due to COVID-19, this meeting will be in person and virtual stream via Zoom. Public notice instructions for this meeting were published in the Herald News and posted on the City of Passaic website, www.cityofpassaic.com, Council Agendas. Instructions are also available on the last page of this agenda. Please be guided accordingly.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Monk,
Present.
Councilwoman Mello,
Present.
Councilman Schwartz,
Present.
and Council President Scheer.
President, should we all please rise?
Heavenly Father, we thank you for everyone that's present here this evening. Lord, we set before you this agenda in this governing body, and we ask you to please guide us in the decision that will take place this evening. In your beloved name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone, to our council meeting tonight. I see we have a lot of new people that we don't usually see. It's wonderful to have you here with us. Before we get to the presentation, if I can first ask if you have a cell phone, if you could please put it on vibrate or silent. Number one. Number two, if you would like a copy of the agenda of tonight's meeting, as well as all the information backing up the agenda, it is available to you on the city's website. You can access there everything that the council receives and has received from the administration on the various resolutions, ordinances, and correspondence. That being said, I see we have something very special tonight, certificates of recognition to Passaic youth that participated in Passaic County's annual poster contest, Mayor?
That is correct. Mr. President. And we will be acknowledging these young people along with their family members with certificates. It is a cue that you've just given me, so the certificates were just placed here. I'll try to improvise and see where the names are in the order that I received them. Just give me 1 second. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Passaic City Hall. Thank you so very much for being here. I believe that there was a request to put the mic on. Thank you. We are so proud to acknowledge and recognize your efforts in this Passaic County contest in order to have their calendar. Thank you, Councilman. In order to have their calendar designed, and I want to begin with the names in the order that I have been given. The first name in the front of the paper is Sarah Aaliyah Hidalgo Lopez. Sarah? There you are. Sarah, come on up. Sarah's parents are Reyes Lopez and Regis Hidalgo. Yes. Ah, you guys want to come up with her? Come on up. Just give me 1 second to locate her certificate along with her name, and we will read this into the record. We are so very proud of you, Sarah. Just give me 1 second as we look for the specific certificate. I have it. Thank you, Councilman Monk. All right, we have it. Look at that, Sarah. Congratulations. So what we have is not only your beautiful submission, but there is a written response from you that is in Spanish. You'd like me to read it? Okay, I'll read it. This is from her. Esta es mi familia. Somos una familia de 4. Mi papá se llama Regis Hidalgo, mi mamá Reidiris López, y mi hermanita Isabel Hidalgo, y yo, Sara Hidalgo. Vine a los Estados Unidos con mi mamá y mi hermana hace 6 años. En el mes de febrero de este año, mi papá se reunió con nosotros. Hemos pasado algunas situaciones, retos y dificultades, pero gracias a Dios estamos de pie. Soy un estudiante de la escuela Passaic Gifted and Talented Academy. Me gusta ir al arte, la música y los números. Me considero disciplina y responsable, una persona de disciplina y responsable. Me gusta hacer amigos y ayudar a los demás. Espero poder seguir desarrollándome en lo que me gusta y retarme cada día a ser mejor. Agradezco a Dios infinitamente. Agradezco a mis padres que siempre están para mí y me ayudan a expandir mis conocimientos. Agradezco a los maestros que me han guiado y me invitan a dar siempre más de mí. Siento muy bendecida. Gracias. Sara Alía Hidalgo López. And she sent us a beautiful picture with her family. Thank you. Each one of our participants have received a special letter from my office along with our city council. This certificate recognizes Sarah Alía Hidalgo Lopez. I, as mayor of the city of Passaic, along with our city council, would like to congratulate you on your honorable mention as a participant in Passaic County's 27th annual My County Poster Calendar Contest. Being selected out of over 470 entries is quite amazing, and we are all so very proud of you. Congratulations. Good. Congratulations. All right, our next award will go to Miss Abigail. Miss Abigail Reyes. Abigail Reyes. Abigail? Abigail's parents' names written here. That's right, we can just leave this right here. Oh, I got it. Right, Miss Abigail Reyes and her family. Abigail, I'm going to read this out for you. It's yours. Want me to read it? You want to proofread it first? You want to make sure? So listen, I might have written something there that I'm not prepared to have shared publicly.
You want to read it?
You want to read it? It's all yours. Come up here. Come right up here. Go on, Mike. Great job, Abigail.
My name is Abigail Reyes. My story starts as a young English girl. I interviewed my mother, who is 31 years old, which has much to say about myself. There are 2 people in my family, with my mom, aunt, 3 sisters, and 4 brothers, and also me. I have my grandparents who are in Mexico, and we always keep in touch. And in a very unique love for all my family members. I am 9 years old and I'm in 4th grade. I've been living in Passaic my whole life, and I have always believed in myself. On Friday art class, our teacher said that we're having a Passaic drawing country contest. When I heard that, I started getting ideas. So I drew a carnival and colored it. When I turned it in, I was so confident and proud of the work I did. A couple of weeks later, I got a certificate saying that I won. I was so impressed and happy that they even hung it outside, and I had to write a history of my family. My contest is the story of me. I am so proud of my life.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to show you the calendar. I believe, and it's already up here on the wall, but I believe that the month of August was Abigail Reyes. It was actually chosen for the county calendar. Congratulations. No, Abigail, that certificate is yours. That certificate, yeah, this is yours. You get to keep this. You get to use it. I, Mayor Hector C. Laura, along with our city council in the city of Passaic, congratulate you on winning the Passaic County's 27th annual My County Poster Calendar Contest and having your artwork chosen to represent the month of August. This is an amazing achievement you will always remember, and we are thrilled for you. Congratulations. You're very welcome. Abigail, I just want you to know that August, because it is officially your month, entitles you to free usage of Councilman Monk's car, his home, his vacation. No, I'm just kidding. No, congratulations, Abigail. Congratulations. Gracias. Okay.
Sharing that already.
He got a little nervous, Councilman. My car was just getting away.
This is what I get for coming on time.
There you go.
Just imagine what happens when you're not here, Councilman.
We also want to call up Mr. Diego Jose Tavares Fana. Mr. Diego, with his family. Diego. Come on up. His entire family.
All right.
José, ¿tú quieres que yo lea el bio? ¿O tú lo quieres leer? Yo te lo leo. Okay, I've been asked to read it. It is in Spanish. Bear with me. Diego José Tavares Fana nació el 9 de agosto del año 2003 en la República Dominicana. Inmigramos en el 2018 a los Estados Unidos, a la ciudad de Passaic, Nueva Jersey, la mejor ciudad en el mundo. No dice eso, pero yo lo pienso. Soy alcalde y yo amo esta ciudad. Inició sus estudios en la escuela número 10 a cursar el kindergarten, donde fue acogido con mucho cariño por los superiores por su buen desempeño, responsabilidad y respeto, por lo que esto lo llevó a ser referido a la Academia de Dotados y Talentoso, o Gifted and Talented, de Passaic, por Mrs. Colón, principal para ese momento. Diego ha sido reconocido por sobresalir en diferentes actividades. Es un niño amoroso, inocente para su edad, muy transparente, respetuoso, amable, le gusta la prehistoria de dinosaurios, a escudriñar todo aquello que le llame la atención. Estamos muy orgullosos de ser parte de su formación y poder brindarle a la sociedad un hombre con valores. Diego es un ejemplo de líderes en nuestra comunidad y un muchacho que está representando no solamente su cultura, su comunidad, pero su familia en una manera maravillosa y un orgullo de sus padres. Y te queremos felicitar y reconocer a ti, Diego. Felicidades. Come up here. Come on. You got to say something. You want to say something? Yeah. All right. Yeah. Get out my way, man. I got some things I want to share.
Gotta get it off my
I'm a
chest.
Dominican kid, and the reason I like New Jersey so much is because of its education.
Wow.
On behalf of our entire city government, we congratulate you and encourage you to continue in your efforts. De parte de nuestra administración, unidos con mis colegas, te damos las felicitaciones y también como esta oportunidad a sus padres, a felicitarlos, a decirle que su esfuerzo, su sacrificio a venir aquí no ha sido en vano, ha sido de grande bendición porque vamos a ver tus niños llegar a ser los futuros líderes de nuestra ciudad y de nuestra nación. Y eso aplica para todos los niños. Thank you. I said to your parents who are so emotionally moved that we as a collective body recognize his efforts and his accomplishments, that he would be a remarkable young man, but also that their sacrifice and commitment to come to this country has not been in vain, as obviously they are instilling important values that are leading him down the right path. All right, for this award, we would like to call up David Anita. David, did I say this right? David Anico. David, do you want to read this or you want me to read it? You want to read it? You don't want to read it? Do you want me to read it?
No.
Do you not want it read? You don't want it read? You want me to summarize it?
Nothing, just go straight to the certificate. A gentleman following after our assemblyman and council president's heart. Listen, let's wrap this up. Have you ever seen him get an award and you just like him? Come on up here. Come on up here.
I know, I wrote it.
I will read the certificate. David Anico, hold on. Did
I think we should
Councilman
have-
Dr. Love said, I know it already. I'm the one that wrote my bio. I don't need it read. I heard you. I heard you whispering. Certificate of recognition for David Anico. I, as mayor of the city of Passaic, Hector C. Laura, along with our city council, joined together to congratulate you on your honorable mention as a participant in the Passaic County's 27th annual My County Poster Calendar Contest. Being selected out of 470 entries is quite amazing, and we are all so very proud of you. David, you make us proud, you make your family proud, you make our entire city proud. We're here to congratulate you and honor you. Great job. This is yours along with your letter. Leave the letters in here. All right, we're gonna leave it right here. There you are. You want to say a few words? It's right here. It's your mic. It's all you. Anything you want. Anything.
Opening something new in New Jersey.
Anything you, if you want something new in the state of New Jersey, you're gonna look at that gentleman right there with the tie. He works as an assemblyman. You're just gonna direct your request to him. Any request, you anything at all.
But
Anything.
But think local. The mayor's right next to you.
Anything right there in the state, he will take it directly to the governor. His name is Council President Gary Shear.
Council President Gary Shear, can you make an exotic pet store? Like with hedgehogs, snakes, and alligators, and lizards, and all that other
Wow.
more wild
That's
pets.
quite an idea.
What kind of
And I
animals
know-
would you like? What kind of pets?
A snake and a hedgehog.
Okay, if we can get a snake and a hedgehog, is that it? You sure? This is your
Said
time.
alligator, too.
Look, we're on camera. This is your time to ask. Anything else?
This is like African.
Anything in the jungle, at least.
You know what, David? I think that is a wonderful, wonderful idea, and I think it could be a great teaching tool. And it is just, you know who probably is falling in love with this idea right this very second?
Councilman
Turn
Daniel
around,
Schwartz.
it's Mayor Laura. Mayor Laura, what a wonderful idea.
Now, David, perhaps what we can do, because we as a governing body, we may not always be able to grant every request, but it is our goal to approach every request with the resources available. Maybe we can have a day where we can put up posters of exotic pets, but we need amazing young people who can draw them. Do you know any young man that could draw exotic pets, and maybe we can feature it right here in the council? You know anyone? Who?
Me.
You? That is awesome. So we're gonna task you.
God
You're gonna
bless her.
draw a couple of the exotic, maybe a hedgehog and a snake and a couple of exotic animals, and the council, if they wish, we will be able to display it right here on the council chamber for one of the meetings. Would that be a good deal? Is that okay with the council?
I think that's a wonderful idea.
All right, can we shake on it? We're shaking on it. All right, it's official. Thank you, David. Thank you. So we're gonna ask if you just allow Council President through the City Council. This is a council meeting. Council President, if I may translate that portion for individuals. David pidió que él quería un zoológico, ¿se dice?
Un zoológico.
Un zoológico con animales exóticos, y aunque no podemos hacer eso porque él quería cocodrilos y él quería, how do you say hedgehog?
Hedgehog.
Ay, se me olvidó.
Tú no sabes, ok. Animales exóticos. Y como eso va a preocupar mucho a nuestro jefe de policía ahí, si traemos leones y tigres, le dimos la oportunidad donde él lo puede dibujar. Y si él lo dibuja, lo vamos a poner ahí, pero también le queremos pedir a todos los niños que si lo traen un dibujo, nosotros se lo vamos a poner aquí, arriba de los concejales, para nuestra próxima reunión. So we'll also offer to all of the students who drew something, if you drew something nice, un hedgehog, él quería un erizo. Ajá, así era la reacción mía. ¿Dónde vamos a tener el erizo? Si ellos dibujan algo, lo vamos a poner aquí, en la pared con los concejales para una reunión. So all of the students, if you want to draw something or give us a submission that you have, even though yours is already up here, Yours is already up here. But everyone, if you want to draw something new, and we'll display it at the next council meeting, and it'll go strategically over our council members for the next meeting. Deal? If we can ask everyone to come up for a picture with our city council. Vengan todas las familias para una foto con los concejales.
Members of the council. Right here. Come right in front of us.
Pasen.
My son is hysterical.
How are you? Ahí minito, ahí adelante. ¿Tú quieres ponerte aquí? Tú te puedes quedar aquí conmigo si tú quieres. Ven, tú te vas a tirar la foto conmigo. Tú te vas a quedar aquí. You should be in the picture. You stay right here. ¿Qué está cool? He should. Oh, okay. He's 5. He knows how to do math? That is awesome. So you want to take the picture? You're going to take the picture with us? All right, come on. You can stand with us. We'll let you stand with us. Come on. We need you to get up on the councilman's table, on his chair. Can you see him here? No?
No, para que se vea.
Can't see him here? Hold on.
First they take your car, Chaim, now they
Yeah,
take
now
your
you can-
chair. Does it ever
You
end?
can stand right now.
You can stand on mine.
Ahí.
Stand still, don't fall. Okay. Don't be careful. There we go. Can you see him now?
Mayor, just hold on to him.
I got him.
No te muevas.
Right here, guys. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3.
Got you. Over high. Good job. Oh, we're good. Okay. You want a photo? Okay, I'll take a quick photo, but we got to continue the meeting. Turn around. You want to come here? Okay. Sure, you can come in real quick.
It's gonna be great. I feel very honored to get
Okay. Okay.
No, the kids.
You want to take a quick picture? Okay.
Yeah, the other kids
Thank
in
you.
line.
All right, we can come on. All right. Oh, mom wants to too? Okay.
Everybody.
Just remember this. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Gracias. Gracias. And we have one more? Yeah, of course. Our council's being very generous with their time. Sure, come on.
No, you want to come? They don't want to take a picture? They took it already? No. You want to come take a picture? No? No picture? No.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Good? David, are we good? Do we need a
You want to
picture?
take a
You good?
picture? You see?
You can come up with David. Come. We'll do one. Make sure we'll get everything. Come on up. That way you have a picture to hold us accountable for your
He's got
Doesn't
the,
want to with his
for
brother.
being up there. Come on up.
he's got the sneak.
Show us who it is.
The twins.
How are you?
One is 5 years old. Okay.
Look,
Well, I'll go.
he said, I get next to me.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Don't forget the pictures. Thank you.
You have to tell them that they got more requests.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, with
You're running for mayor.
Oh,
I look forward to a healthy and productive and competitive election. I don't know if I'll be able to beat you, but I will give my very best. Are you talking about the next election or when you're older? The next election. Declare it a top record. I think you just got 7 endorsements. What's your name? Christopher, just for the city clerk to start making sure you have that name, Christopher. Thank you, Christopher. Christopher dijo que va a correr para alcalde en la próxima elección. Mucha compita. Thank you, Christopher.
I believe by law, there's no campaigning in City Hall.
There's no campaigning in City Hall.
Mayor, with your permission, can we ask you to, this has been amazingly wonderful. Can we ask you to report on this city?
Well, I'll do a brief update because we've had such a wonderful beginning. I was running a little late. I want to thank our police and our fire. Unfortunately, we had two incidents occurring at the same time in the city. An incident that resulted in the blocking off of Main and Burgess. It was an unfortunate incident between two adults, and we needed all of our police to respond. We also had a fire on Jefferson Street, a fire that occurred yesterday and unfortunately reignited. Council President Scheer was there and received an update directly from our firefighters. I want to thank our chief who was present on the scene on Burgess and Main Avenue. We were able to address those issues. So fortunately, I was on the scene there and came running in, and we were able to run directly into this meeting. But those were the incidents that occurred most recently. I'll take the opportunity, as I always do, to highlight the remarkable and amazing work of our emergency responders, our police department, our firefighters. Also, I do want to take this opportunity on public record to state that there was an incident that occurred within our city, similarly as has occurred in other municipalities targeting pharmacies, and individuals with malicious intent came in to rob, but the work of our detectives, utilizing footage from the scene and working with the federal government, they were able to arrest the individual that has been responsible, not only with the incident in Passaic, but around our county. I again want to highlight their efforts and thank our Passaic Police Department, who is doing a great job. Thank you, Chief Guzman. Thank you to all of the administration. Thank you to all of the detectives and all of the commanding officers. They continue to do a remarkable job. Again, also our fire department. On a lighter note, today was Bring Your Kid to Work Day. Council members, City Hall had so many children here. On this day, one day out of the year, we prepare for loud noise, for screaming, for people running around everywhere and not being where they're supposed to. But we ask the children not to judge their parents too much for that. That's just the way they operate in City Hall. Did you appreciate? I get one. I got one badge. Thank you. No, with that said, the parents, they were so proud to have their children here, and we get an opportunity on behalf of our governing body to thank the parents in front of their children for their hard work, their dedication. It is often the case that we as elected officials are at the front of a completed project, an initiative, a program. We cut the ribbons, we speak to the news, and we're on camera. But if our city progresses, if our city succeeds, it is because of the dedication and commitment of amazing individuals who show up every single day to work, who answer the call, who respond to needs, who put their own challenges aside because they have their own families and their own homes to address concerns of some of our most vulnerable residents in our city, whether it's through human services, providing for those who are temporarily homeless or deal with chronic issues, whether it's our police responding to a crime, searching for someone who is missing, a senior citizen or a child, or responding to an accident, whether it's our fire department coming to a fire, whether it's departments inside of City Hall, whether from code, helping someone who wants to expand or repair their home, or receiving applications, or helping someone with passports, or trying to explain why you have to pay taxes on a certain date. There's so many services that are provided. These are the individuals that work every single day and make a difference. And we are so very proud of them, and we're so very happy to receive their children. They explored every inch of our city. They went into the courtroom. I want to thank Judge Blumenthal, who did an amazing job. Rosenbluth, sorry. Judge Rosenbluth, who did an amazing job with the children and explaining the law and the process. And we had an amazing day, and we look forward to next year. I also want to thank Human Resources and the entire staff for working so hard. My administrative team, through the BA, through Kathy Martin and Lisette, and Virginia and Anna, and everyone who worked in collaboration to make the day special for all the children. I'm going to conclude my remarks here. I will share with you, for those who don't come often, usually my reports are very long, but if I continue speaking, you might not be able to get home in time for dinner, so I'll conclude there. Voy a terminar y concluir. Hoy fue un día muy especial. Desafortunadamente vine corriendo porque tuvimos dos incidentes en la ciudad, uno involucrando la policía y otro con los bomberos por un incendio que teníamos. Pero otra vez yo siempre le expreso mi agradecimiento y me aprecio a nuestra policía y bomberos por trabajar y tener ese compromiso con nuestro pueblo, siempre respondiendo, no importa las condiciones o las situaciones. También hoy tuvimos el día de traer tus hijos a escuela, donde pudimos agradecerle a los padres de los hijos por su trabajo y su servicio, porque ellos son la razón por que nuestra ciudad es tan exitosa. Voy a concluir porque si sigo hablando nadie se va a llegar a la casa. Gracias. Thank you very much, Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With the council's permission, why don't we take about a 5 to 10 minute break so that some of the children can get home and get into bed or have dinner. 10-minute break, please.
Estamos cogiendo un break de 5 minutos. It's a break, you can move.
One, and please press 9. Hearing of citizens. In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-1 at SEC, the council opens every public meeting for comments of the public. However, in accordance with NJSA 10:4-12, nothing in this act shall be construed to limit the discretion of a public body to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation meeting. Therefore, please be advised that the council will not entertain any comments from persons who communicate obscene material, make statements which are considered bias intimidation, in which a person intends to intimidate any individual or group because of race, color, religion, gender, handicap, sexual orientation, or ethnicity. Anyone who makes comments intending to harass or speak any offensive language, the person who makes these statements will relinquish their allotted 5 minutes for public discussion. We welcome everyone's comments. Let me share with you again the call-in number. And that number is 929-436-2866. Please enter ID number 898-9261-2341. And press 9. Do we have anyone on the line, Madam Clerk?
Yes, we have Mr. Wolf.
Mr. Wolf, can we please have your name, please?
Hi, thank you. Good evening, Council President. My name is Yosef Wolf. I live at 71 Spring Street in Passaic, New Jersey. I wanted to ask 3 questions to the council tonight. Number 1, there have been a few instances of, the mayor mentioned something in downtown, and I know in my block there were a lot of teenagers that the police were looking for just last week. And I'm wondering where a lot of the city is situated along Route 21, and that's actually, Passaic is getting more congested, and it's one of the ways to get around from either to Clifton, to Elmwood Park, going towards Newark. It's a way to get in and out of the city. It's a very efficient way to get in and out of the city. And I'm wondering if the city would think about, one day, it doesn't have to be right now, and maybe the city will say that it's a privacy issue, putting some video cameras along Route 21, not for speeding, just for, in case the police need to look after license plates that left the city theoretically matched to an incident, would make the city more secure. The second thing I want to ask is, the city is looking at designating a former church on 4th Street. It's 3 or 4 lots. The city is looking to designate as needing of redevelopment. And I'm curious about the lot in between. I think it's 119 4th Street. I'm wondering what about where that fits into the plan. And I want to know, one of the lots is a very big empty parking lot, and it's near a school. It's near a school that's actually going to become more full because of the construction and the projects going on 6th Street. And it's right near a park, multiple parks. And I'm wondering if the city would, from now, before getting any developers' hopes up, say that they want this parcel for parking. And the third thing I want to ask, did the city have a chance ever to look into the taxation of the city, the way that if somebody redoes a bathroom, redoes a kitchen, redoes a basement or an attic, their taxes go up substantially. And there are houses that can sell for $500,000 and they're taxed at $15,000. And buildings that sell for 10 times that price can pay the same amount of taxes. In other cities, it doesn't really happen like this. And I'm wondering if the city, I know that some owners have mentioned to me, and I'm sure it's much more broad than this, that when the city requests, the assessor's office requests documents for their rent rolls, if they don't send them, nothing really happens. And meanwhile, a building could change hands for multiples of millions of dollars, and they can pay less taxes than a house that has just one family occupying it, trying to just raise a little family. I'm wondering how that affects, and if the city can look into that. That's number 3. And the fourth thing I want to ask is really about last meeting. I want to say that I think meetings with Mr. Councilman Chaimunk are just different meetings. I'm happy that he's been attending in person lately. And specifically, I want to ask about the $3 million that went towards the 11 units. I think Councilman Monk asked the question like so poignantly, like nobody else can. How does $3 million end up by a developer who the city commissioner, Mr. Fernandez, says is not even yet named, only that the site is named for needing redevelopment? How does $3 million end up by 11 units in the city of Passaic? How backwards can we be? Thank you. Those are my 4 questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wolf. Let me, so that I don't get lost here, Mr. Fernandez, can you help us with the last item first, and then we'll go to the other 3?
I'll do the best I can, Council President. So that is based, the allocations are based on HUD calculations. We discussed that at the last meeting. So based on the HUD calculations, each one of those units, because of its special nature, this is not normal funding that we usually get. This was through the American Rescue Plan and the federal government, that it was for a specific population. It was a targeted population. So they, in their calculations, each one of the units could receive, depending on the type of unit, anywhere between $200,000 to $288,000 per unit for these specific types of units for this specific population. And that's why the number came out to what it came out to and why it was 11. I guess that answers the question. I don't know if there was another question he had based on that. I think he was just questioning the 3 million and the 11 units, right? Is that?
I think, forgive me, Council President, if the
Please,
question, the reason why I say that is, you know what, no preface. It's a good question. It's just that what it implies, how does a developer end up with the $3 million?
Mr. Fernandez said there's no developer. I'm sorry. I just want to clarify.
I didn't say that.
I'm sorry,
No word to my
Mr. Wolf. Your time is at the 5-minute, past the 5-minute level.
Council President, what I was going to state is, oftentimes, and I think they're legitimate questions from the community, if I may, it would be like me asking Councilwoman Mello, how did you end up with your house and not somebody else? When there are opportunities to apply or put in an amount, and there's a process, and you are chosen, and it's legitimate, and it's vetted, and all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed, you end up with the property. If your bid, if your application, if whatever compelling argument or paperwork you put in is approved. There are layers and layers of government and approval process for developers, but I think the BA made it clear. This is a specific allocation that had to meet specific requirements. Had this not gone through, it would have just gone back to the federal government. We don't get to, and I just want to clarify this for education. We don't get to take the 3 million and say, that's a good parking lot idea by the church, which I agree with you, Mr. Wolf. I think that would be great to turn a lot of properties into parking lots. Look at that. We have something we agree on. We don't always get to decide who wants to buy the property. We don't get to tell individuals what their money should go for or what projects they could present to a certain extent. And the council does a very good job at vetting these applications and considering the impact, the footprint that it's going to have on communities around the city. Working along with my administration and those volunteers on those boards, we try to take, and I use this word often, a pragmatic approach. But in terms of the developers, in terms of the investment property, I think that was answered last meeting, and the business administrator articulated it best. It depends on HUD regulations. That is beyond us. We don't get to arbitrarily make certain requirements or decide how these monies will be awarded specifically, or whether we get to keep them if it doesn't get awarded. I was just trying to shed a little bit of light on that, Council President. I hope I
think
explain that a bit.
I think you more than succeeded in that regard, Mayor. The gentleman asked about taxation. Why is it that a huge building will pay the same amount of taxes as my small little house? Could you enlighten us, Mr. Fernandez?
So the basis of and I think even Mr. Wolf said it, is based on rent rolls. So it's based on income. Depending on the income of that property is the assessments. I would be hard pressed to find one.
So, excuse me, my home has no income. Does that mean I have no taxes?
And value. So when it's a multifamily, it's based on the rent rolls. And then when it's a single family, well, every tax bill is divided between improvements and land value, right? So your home would be on the improvement of your home, right? How new it is, if you got that brand new kitchen, right? The size of your home, the number of bedrooms, and your lot size. And then the multifamily dwellings are based on what the rent rolls and your land size. And I could tell you that
How about commercial and industrial? I mean, I've seen some huge buildings, that are coming to Passaic for numerous wonderful reasons, and they're paying less taxes than I do.
I don't know if that's the case, sir. I would argue that that is not the case.
Okay.
Large multifamily homes and industrial buildings would not equate to one family, what a one family would pay. Those numbers are.
What my question really is from a tax point of view, I've always been told that industrial and commercial property is taxed differently than homes.
That is correct. Single family homes are taxed one way, multifamily homes are taxed one way, industrial and commercial are taxed a different way, all to equate to a market value that we come to an assessed number.
Who establishes those?
The tax assessor, who is licensed and actually overseen by the county tax board.
So would a house in Passaic cost the same house in a neighboring community? In Clifton, would the house be less taxes in Clifton, I think? But if we plot Passaic in the middle of New York City, it would be much more.
Right, there's a lot of circumstances that surround an assessment.
The gentleman spoke, Mr. Fernandez, about 4th Street, 119 4th.
Yeah, so that actually is on this evening for a designation and area need of redevelopment. That went before the planning board and received its recommendation. This is an abandoned house of worship. In fact, it has a unsafe structure notice from our construction official. and met all the legal criteria to be designated. It is 2 lots. The house of worship owned where the sanctuary is and the rectory, as well as a parking lot next door. There is a lot in between. That lot that's in between has an improvement on it, right? A multifamily house that's still occupied and in good shape, and has been the approach of the mayor and the council. If they're functioning, we're not going to go to take it, which would then require an actual designation of an area in need of redevelopment, which that comes with a 30-year tax abatement. Not in this case. This is an area in need of rehabilitation. The maximum is 5 years, not redevelopment.
There are rules and regulations governing all these things?
Absolutely. In fact, that one's governed
From the city or
from the state. So
the
it's the
state.
New Jersey Local Housing and Redevelopment Law guides what the criteria is to meet as an area in need of rehabilitation or redevelopment for that matter.
The gentleman's first question was on Route 21. Best of my knowledge, Route 21 is not a city road, I'm correct?
That's correct.
Okay, it's a
State highway.
state highway. I actually knew that.
Oh,
Can we put cameras on Route 21? On the Passaic piece of Route 21? And
Council President, as to the question about hidden cameras, we have hidden cameras in the city. We tend to not tell people where we have hidden cameras. May defeat the purpose
Why?
of the whole hidden camera approach thing.
I'm
So
curious.
all as the director of public safety, I would just jump in here to say that we do have cameras in areas where they're not easily identified, and that the gentleman's concerns
we're talking
have been noted.
Route 21, in all seriousness, Route 21 specifically.
Do we have cameras in the vicinities of the entrances and exits to our city? Yes, we often utilize them. We do not publicize them.
They're on city property.
They are on city properties, and sometimes through the efforts directed by our chief and our detectives, businesses that may be in close proximity to the entrances and exits are requested to add cameras strategically in a way that may capture images or footage that we can utilize. We tap directly into our departments, and we utilize the footage to obviously identify individuals as they come in and out, whether it's their license plate or individuals. And then there are other areas around the city where we have strategic surveillance to respond to concerns, whether they are concerns that arose from recent news, concerns of the community, or general concerns in cities like ours. But again, I'll reiterate, we do not publicize it. And Council President, if I may, I do want to remind the public on a different question, if you would indulge me here, that a few years ago at the League of Municipalities, I had presented a request, and we continue to fight with the support of the City Council. I have always taken this position, and I believe this to be the case. I know that some may disagree, that a home, when having improvements done, should not result in higher taxes if those improvements are aesthetic and do not result directly in adding square footage. I wholeheartedly believe this. I continue to push for it. I bring it up every single year. I had particular law written and presented in the League of Municipalities with other elected officials. It has been something that I have been advocating for since I've become mayor. I genuinely believe whether you redo your kitchen, your basement, steps, if you are not adding any square footage to your home, it does not make any sense to me. It almost de-incentivizes individuals to invest and beautify the area and the aesthetics. I will continue to fight for this. We fortunately have a representative in the state, but there are others who represent other districts. I don't know their names. I know their names. They're just not as important as ours. But I know that if it's a challenge here, it's a challenge for him as well. But I want not only the caller, but the community to know that we are aware of the concerns. We fight on behalf of the community. Sometimes we get small wins, and every now and then we get big victories that we get excited for. But this is one that we continue to fight for. Even if it's as a pilot program, we do not believe that if individuals are making improvements to their homes, aesthetic, well, that was a little bold. I don't want to say we. And there may be some that disagree. I want to ask them to explain. I believe wholeheartedly that improvements to your home, aesthetic improvements, practical improvements that do not result in the increase of square footage, should not result in you having to pay additional taxes. I wanted to remind that because we spoke about it publicly and we continue to fight for them. Thank you for indulging me, Council President.
No, 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 Mayor, thank you very much for your thoughts. Is there anyone else who would like to address the council? Madam Clerk, do we have anyone on the phone?
On the Zoom, no.
Yes, sir.
Joe Conoscenti, 170 Broadway. Council President, the intersection of Howe and Paulson Avenue. My question
I'm
is.
sorry, Paulson and?
Paulson
Howe.
and Howe Avenue.
How?
My question is, was the study ever done with that intersection? My next question is, the illegal vendors throughout the city, has there any summonses given out or any tickets given out or anything? You know, I would like to know how many of them were given out.
And this is for?
Vendors, illegal vendors. My next question is, the property on 147, 149 Broadway, I know it was just bought by a contractor, but my point is, I've been bringing it up several times. The questions that I have they been fined? Anybody been fined on this property? Because you have a lot of hazardous on this property. Human waste, you got garbage, you got everything there. And I'd just like to know if there's any summonses given out. My next question is, I brought it up at the last meeting about these outdoor dinings.
Outdoor?
Dinings. Where they have dining outside, if you want to eat outside, go inside. Okay. The one at 665 Main Avenue is a disaster. I don't know why you can't turn it back to the park the way it was. That used to be like a pocket park named after Joan Bogus. Bring it back the way it is. I don't know if you're paying rent, you're using this space, or you gave it free. I have no idea. A couple weeks ago, at the Armory Park, is known as Armory Park. They got the Revolutionary War Historic Site, which had a event going on with a clinic of cats and dogs, which I feel that is inappropriate for that. And another issue that I have, you have a dog park named Armory Park. I mean, this is supposed to be a war historic site, not a place for animals. So, and my other question is, Council President, to the mayor. Main Avenue, they're building a parking lot of 70 cars. My question to the mayor is this because across the street, there's 2 empty stores, which they're going to be taken over soon, and you need more parking? Because when the 2 new stores come in there, they're going to need parking for their customers, like Amazon and the grocery store that's supposed to be moving in over there, if it's still on the books there. So these are my questions I have.
Can you help me just to your last question, Mr. Conoscenti? I'm trying to understand it better.
The last question is, this animal shelter is getting a 70-car parking lot.
Okay.
My question to the mayor is, across the street in the mall, there's 2 empty stores, which soon they're going to be taken over. So the residents won't be able to park there. They have to park in the new lot.
Okay.
That's my question. Yes or no?
Very good. Thank you. Uh, Paulson and Howe, you asked if there's a study done. I assume you mean a traffic study, yes?
Yes.
Chief, would you know offhand? That would be great. Susie? Thank you. I needed to consult with our attorney. Your second question is regarding if any summonses have been issued for illegal vendors. Chief, would you know that offhand, or you'd have to look that up, or what? A little bit louder, Chief, please. Sure.
Yes, through our health department. Yes. They often work with our police department because you need to have a permit to sell food, and the vendors that they're referring to is usually food. They have to go through our clerk department. There have been occasions where our code officials have gone out, have actually stopped individuals from selling these items, confiscated their items, and police are often involved if there is any resistance or if the situation or the exchange between the official, the code official, and the individual selling escalates and creates a danger. But oftentimes this falls under the purview of our health department, our code officials, and we refer them to the clerk to find out whether they've requested the appropriate permits. Yes, in terms of the question, violations have been given out, and we continue to respond to the calls of the community, especially those that are positioned in front of restaurants or other eateries.
Thank you, Mayor. The gentleman asked about 147, is it, to 149 Broadway, whether anyone was fined. Chief, that's a question. If we could ask you to look into that and report back to us. Yeah, why would they be fined?
Because you have squatters living there.
Okay, good,
And
enough. That says it
property's
right now.
a mess.
In terms of the dog park, you questioned why it was put there, and the answer is because it was usable space. And more than usable space, I will tell you, I've personally learned something which is fascinating to me. My daughter, my youngest, has a dog, and she's taken the dog often to the Armory Park. Her inquisitiveness about the park, she never had before. She does now. It's driving people to that. Things changed. We honor our heroes. We honor those who most especially died for this country, for this state, for this county, for this city. We need to also blend into the future as we remember the past. And one way I think that we've done it so successfully is by putting up these memorials and markers of those who given their lives to this country, and done it in interesting areas where people question, and through those questions actually learn. We're not putting it into some museum where the doors are always locked, but rather in very public places that people see. And I think that's frankly a fascinating way of doing things, and many other municipalities I know are doing something similar. So we thank you for your question, sir.
Council President?
Is disrespect?
If I may, because I will answer the last question, I believe, is of the parking lot, but if I may, I just want to remind the public, and I know the council is aware of this, the area where the dog park was placed, there were no monuments. The reason why it actually came about is we learned that many of our veterans who've come back from war often face certain challenges, PTSD, traumatic experiences. And one of the therapeutic recommendations and often approaches people have taken are having service animals and support pets for our veterans. When we learned of the high number of veterans that actually have pets and dogs and use them in terms of therapy, because of some of the experiences that they faced at war, we invited veterans to the conversation about the potential of creating a location in Armory Park where some of these veterans who have their dogs could come, because Armory Park was being predominantly used for holiday services, Memorial Day, or things of this nature. And we wanted to make sure that there was usage, that we would attract more people. And I think the council president articulated it best. Individuals that often never came by the park to see these monuments, honoring these individuals, now we're coming and looking at the monuments. We strategically placed it away from the monuments. The area before the dog park was created was often frequented by homeless individuals that would stay there, and there were so many issues and complaints. We understood that just removing them and leaving a vacuum was not the solution. So after numerous conversations and receiving a great deal of support from veterans organizations on this initiative and their expression of appreciation that we considered their service animals, we decided to do a dedication, and we actually, on the day of the dedication, honored veterans who have pets. We actually learned of dogs that were used in war, oftentimes, and unfortunately, where they were used to identify dangerous areas or for other tasks. So there was a tie-in, and I wanted to remind individuals of that, because so many veterans who have brought their dogs there have expressed their thank you to us to consider them. And many of our veterans that are seniors, they tend to have a family member. They refer to these pets as family members, their dogs, and they bring them out there. So we're so grateful. And then Council President, as to the last question, just a couple of things. The particular stores located in the mall, there's an existing parking lot in that mall. And that parking lot has always been used in the past when there was a pharmacy, when those businesses were occupied. This additional parking lot that was created, and I remind individuals that there's one created there and one created on 3rd Street. And that is very important, because that's been our approach collectively, working together as a governing body to expand parking opportunities throughout the city. We've often witnessed cars driving through the park as individuals are trying to walk or jog or run. We've talked about this often, of how we can create a parking space that would be a benefit inside of the park and avoid individuals parking on the grass or parking in areas that they shouldn't park or driving through. This parking lot resolves that issue. The parking lot also becomes of great benefit to individuals who come for activities in the park, for individuals around the neighborhood overnight. We are very excited to have additional public parking. We're one of the most densely populated cities in America, and we continue to expand parking opportunities, whether it's a parking deck that brings 300 new parking spaces, additional parking spaces in our downtown area, in our east side, in our uptown area, beyond Main Avenue. Our angled parking initiative, which directly resulted, and I think this is extremely important, because we had an opportunity to take our administration to Washington, where they recognized municipalities that had 0 fatalities as a result of car crashes. Over the last 2 years, we have had 0 fatalities as a result of car crashes. It was us in Jersey City, and I have been recognized for this in terms of the data, the angled parking initiative, which slowed down traffic. Some people complain. Now it takes longer to come down the road, but that was the purpose, to slow down traffic. We understand that it's a slow progress, sometimes like traffic. Sometimes it feels like it's taking too long, but little by little, we continue to expand parking opportunities. But this parking deck and these different initiatives are wonderful. But just to clarify, the additional spaces, 70 spaces, in an area that was very underutilized, I just want to be able to make sure people understand how this happens. It's not one day to another that as mayor, I snap my finger and say, let's make some parking. I admit sometimes I go around the city and I identify an area and say this would be a good idea. But because it's in a park, we need state approval. So we submit applications, reach out to our council president in his role as assemblyman. He makes phone calls. Sometimes the process gets expedited. And then we get these approvals and we go to the community, and we have received so much positive feedback on this parking. And so as to the question, which was a yes or no question, was this parking lot created because there are 2 empty stores that will be occupied? First, I will say I'm excited that those stores are going to be occupied. We continue to see more and more individuals interested in opening up new business in Passaic. But no, that was not the primary reason for the lot. It was to add parking space and to keep our word as a team, as a governing body, that every opportunity that we can to ensure that we can expand parking opportunities and have responsible development, that we would capitalize on those opportunities. There was funding, there was space that wasn't being utilized, and there was an approval process that we can benefit from through crucial and extremely important relationships through state government representatives and through extremely sharp minds on the local level, like the council members, our business administrators, engineers, and others. I hope those answers were sufficient. Thank you.
Very much so. Thank you, Mayor. Anyone else like to address the council, please?
We don't have anyone on the line, sir.
And no one here? That being the case,
Move the public portion, please.
there's a motion to
Second.
close and motion seconded to close public hearing.
Councilman Monk,
Yes.
Councilman Love,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mello,
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz,
Yes.
Councilman Garcia,
Yes.
and Council President Shear.
Yes, thank you. We're up to Roman numeral 8 on our agenda. Ordinances for second and final reading. Hearing is required. Number 1, proposed ordinance 2392-23, an ordinance amendment to the City of Passaic towing and storage fee schedule ordinance. Is there a motion, please, to open public hearing?
So moved. Second.
Motion and second. Roll call, please, to open public hearing.
Councilman Monk,
Yes.
Councilman Love,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mello,
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz,
Yes.
Councilman Garcia,
Yes.
and Council President Shear.
Yes, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, the council will be deliberating proposed ordinance 2392. If you would like to address this item and this item only, we ask you to please call in. It's the same call-in information that we shared with you earlier. That information is dial 929-436-2866. Meeting ID number 898-9261-2341, and press 9 again, 929-436-2866. Meeting ID number 898-9261-2341, and press 9.
No, sir, not yet.
Very good.
Mr.
If I can
Coniston is
ask
coming up.
some questions, Mr. Fernandez, on this. How is this, what exactly are we doing? We're capping fees?
Yes, Council President. So originally, we would bid this out and we would have a single tower. And that sometimes is ripe for other circumstances that this little watch in my wrist constantly starts hearing things it's not supposed to. So what the direction that this administration, the mayor specifically put before the council, was an opportunity to cap these rates. In fact, the local rate for storage of the vehicle and mileage of the vehicle is what our residents have been accustomed to. We removed a lot of the outdated information and followed the state guidelines. There was a discussion off record regarding who would be, subject to this. And after reading it, and I'll defer to the attorney, it is for all private towers that want to tow in the city of Passaic. So this would now encompass any tower that comes in to tow a vehicle within the city of Passaic.
One of the complaints that I get from people who've had their cars towed is they have to go first to the police station, then they have to go to the yard, which is located.
So in this case, it has to be within, I think, a 2-mile radius or a 3-mile radius within our borders. So it can't be farther than that. So any
The
yard
question is,
that we tow.
2-3 miles is 2-3 miles, and your car's been impounded, right? And rightfully so, you did something wrong. But doesn't that cause extreme inconvenience to the person who is now carless?
So because it's a police tow in this scenario, they have to get a release from the police, because if it's under investigation or there's an issue.
No,
So
I understand that.
Yeah.
I understand that, but, so I imposed on a friend of mine who drove me to the police station. The friend left, and I'm now at the police station. I'm gonna have to walk 2-3 miles to a tower to get my car back.
So, I mean, it would depend if your friend wouldn't give you the ride to the tow yard, right? That would happen. You got to go wherever the tow yard is. One would argue, even under the past circumstance, if you're at City Hall to pick it up, you still would have to walk 2 or 3 miles under this scenario because that's where the lot was for the previous tower. That hasn't changed. That's still part of the regulations, the distances between their yards and the cars. But because it is a police tow, unfortunately, you're going to have to stop at the police station first. And again, and at the mayor's direction, we did a lot of research to make it as convenient as possible. Some of the things that we've added for towers that want to tow for the city, not private tows, but people want to tow for the city. Expanded hours of operation have been put into our specs if they want to tow for the city at the mayor's direction, different hours.
What happens?
Access.
What happens if there's no towing company, there's no group that has the ability to do the towing? What happens if no one responds to the RFP or the RFQ?
So in this case, because this ordinance is being presented in this fashion and there's a set fee schedule to it, we can go out and get, as long as they're within that mile radius that's still in the ordinance, any towers from any of that, we can go in, and under the law, we're allowed to solicit for their services. So it's not just, let's say the current owner doesn't want to do it at these rates, you can go to a neighboring tower.
And what happens if there's no one within the radius who is willing to do it at the rates that we're being asked to agree to?
So I don't think that'll happen, but if that,
So if this was,
so let's say if it does,
if this was a resolution, I would feel much more comfortable.
So you couldn't do a resolution. What would happen is then you would have to do a bid, and it would end up for one bidder that would come in, which still would have to meet the same code, and you'd be stuck with the one tower, which is what we used to do before. So if you want to have a greater options so that what you just said has the least amount of possibility of happening, you do it this way so you can go to multiple towers that you can solicit for the work, right? So this actually, in your scenario, would actually be of greater help to make sure that you have multiple towers that can do this. Secondly, this is the majority of what's on here is taken directly from the state and the state towing contracts, which are accepted by towers in the entire state of New Jersey. We did that also to limit the possibility of that scenario happening. But what would happen if there was in the rare case that, let's say that did happen and all the 15, 20 towers that are in that vicinity do not do it, then it would require, which by the way, the distances is not something that we're putting here. That's something that the mayor and the council have had for some time in the solicitation. Then we would have to rethink that policy of the distances so that instead of you only going 2 or 3 miles because no one else responded, you would end up going 5 or 10 or whichever the first tower is. I do not believe that to be the case because of all the things I just stated previously.
Councilman Monk.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just need some clarification to understand this ordinance. So based on this ordinance, and we spoke about this offline earlier. So if I call my car is stuck in my driveway.
On your driveway.
And I call I'm sorry?
I'm just repeating so I know that I'm hearing right.
Yes.
So a car is stuck on your
My
driveway.
driveway, and I call a tower from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He has to abide by these pricing.
I believe it does. I'll defer to the attorney, but there's a mileage fee. So if you're calling them from Pittsburgh and that's your choice, they can't charge more. I believe it's $7 per mile.
Yep.
So you'll pay $7 every mile, but that's the fee. Unless they want to give you a discount. That's
So-
on them.
Councilman, with a moment, please, is that within the city they'll pay that X dollars or the entire route?
So, and again, I'm going to defer to the attorney. It says here, if I read this, and this didn't change, by the way, this has always been in the ordinance. All property owners and motorists who require the services of a private towing company shall pay not to exceed the following fees. Now, that towing company who doesn't work for the city, right, because they're not our towers, can decide that they don't want to pick your car up because they want you to pay them $10 a mile. That's on the tower, not on us. But if they want our business within our city, that's the charge. And if you want to pay more, that's on you. That's not on us. Right?
We're talking about, for clarity's sake, obviously this body has authority where it has authority and nowhere else. Would be my assumption, Susie, from a legal point of view, that if I called a tower from Flemington, that these rates would only apply within the borders of the city of Passaic.
The mileage fee would apply to where they would be towing the car
To where they were towing the cars to or from?
to. So if the question is, if you call a tower from Flemington to tow your car, what can they charge you pursuant to the ordinance would be $7. It starts at the time of hookup, not the time to get to your house.
I don't believe it includes from. Council President, I'm trying to clarify. You meaning if you got stuck in Flemington and you asked them to tow you back to Passaic, would that limit the fee? Or if they're going to tow the car from Passaic to their Flemington lot?
My questions, very frankly, are both.
Both. I don't believe we have jurisdiction over the fee that they would charge outside of the city. Meaning, if my car broke down in Newark and I called a towing company to tow me from Newark back home, the city of Passaic may be limited in terms of any laws that restrict how much they can charge because that occurred in a different municipality. In terms of whether someone can tow your vehicle from your property out of the city, I believe that the charges that we can control and that are border, meaning if you're towing your car from your garage or your driveway to the mechanic in Passaic, but if you're asking someone, can you please tow my car from my driveway to my mechanic in Secaucus? I do not believe the law, but I'll leave it to the attorney can say you can only charge this amount to take it to Secaucus. But Susan, I'll leave it to you.
Well, these are the rates published by the ordinance. If a tower says, I want to charge you $10 once I get out of the city borders instead of $7, they can do that, but they can't tow you within the city for any more than $7.
So then if the city calls a tower 3 miles away to tow a city that's parked illegally, so for the first mile in Passaic, you only charge $7, but then that tower could charge wherever he wants.
That would
Out of
only
the
be if
city.
they're going to take the vehicle to a lot outside of the city, which that.
If I may.
Go ahead.
Mayor. So in his scenario, in the councilman's scenario, we called for the tow because they were parked illegally, right? Okay. What the one part you're missing is that when they're our tower, we have a separate contract with them that says to your lot. So let's say for argument's sake, it's in Clifton because Clifton is within 2 miles of our border. That lot in Clifton still has to apply by these rules because they're our tower based on our agreement on this ordinance.
Which is different from
If it's a private tower who wants to leave the town.
wants to have their car towed to their dealership.
Okay, so again, the way it's written right now, it's not only if the city calls, but any individual calls, any towing company for whatever reason, they have to comply by these prices. Which makes it a resident's responsibility to know the law of that, make sure he didn't get ripped off, which was charged more. It's not our issue, right? Whatever gets charged, ours. But okay, so how's this get enforced? So if someone charged me too much, I called them, they towed a car for me, they overcharged what these pricing is. How do I file that? Where do I go
So
to
it
file a complaint?
it
That
depends-
meets the ordinance in the city of Passaic.
It depends who towed it for what reason.
I
So
told,
if it's your own private tow, then you gotta go separate and apart on your own and file your own suit. If it's ours, then we, the city, can enforce that because that tower is our tower who agreed to abide by these rates.
okay, so, fine. Now, if the city's calling a tower, right? The city could call, I guess, a tower right now. So there's no, in the past, we used to bid out.
Mhm.
So we don't need to, we no longer need to bid out. The city can call any tower we want
Okay.
in any, whatever it is.
That falls under the guidelines and restrictions of this.
Okay, so I call a tower from 4 miles away. And I just want to piggyback a little bit what Council President asked.
As government or as a person?
As a government,
resident?
as government, one of the biggest complaints we've gotten over the last 20 years is when a car is towed, is they first have to go to the facility of wherever they was towed, that's 3 miles away. Then they have to get their insurance, go back to the police department. Then they need to get the license and registration, which is usually in the car, go back 3 miles there, get it, then go back to the operator and go to the police department, get a release, and then go back and pick up their car. I mean, I understand it's important to open things up and all that, but everything we're doing here is always to make life easier for our residents, and this is just turning everything upside down. I mean, to get your car back when it was in Passaic was a disaster. Disaster. And now we just want to open it up and make it even worse. I just don't understand where we're going with this.
That is a good point, Councilman. In the scenario where someone left their papers in the car,
It's usually in the car.
usually the case where they leave their insurance and their registration and it's towed. Oftentimes, as a direct response to the desire to make people's lives easier, there are courtesy assistance the city provides in order to get someone to get their paperwork and then come back. Now with technology, often you can share your insurance and registration off of your phone. As technology continues to progress, there are different ways that you can access these important papers. But here's the reason for the ordinance, so we can have the I think, very transparent conversation. There may be a convenience with having a lot in the city. What we feel is that it has not been to the benefit of the residents of the city of Passaic to not have options. Because with options, there is competition in pricing. So what we may lose in a little bit of time, what occurs, and I can only use this analogy because it's the first one that came to mind, it may be flawed. When we had one McDonald's, the burgers were $7 and $8. And there was no other option. Like it, you don't get McDonald's. When another McDonald's opened up, individuals said, why do we need two McDonald's? But prices came down. Because the other McDonald's said, I'm going to sell my Big Mac at $4. And people had a choice. So you can have the convenience of going to Main Avenue, you're closer. Or you can go buy your 4 Big Macs on Dane Avenue, you're going to save the money. What we have found is that when you only have one option, you seem to be at the mercy of that one business. No particular business, I'm speaking in generality. That business could say, I'm going to charge $230 a day for storage fees. I'm your only option. I'm going to tow as many cars as I choose, and you deal with the problem in conversation. If a council member calls and says, I believe this car was towed unjustly, and the individuals go, well, we're on vacation, come pick it up on Monday. There weren't other options. What we're trying to create are options. It does not exclude the existing towing company from being an option that is called. The lots have to be within the same distance, according to the ordinance. If in the hypothetical individuals do not have cars, they would still have to walk 2 miles from City Hall all the way down on Broadway to the lot or the different lots. In order for someone to be considered, they must have a lot, they must fall within the mileage that we have designated, and it gives the city the opportunity to call someone else. So if a police officer identifies a vehicle, if for whatever reason PSE&G has to do work on a road and last minute people are contacted, having options gives us the opportunity in a scenario to say, could you please tow the car to the next street? And if the tower goes, no, I'll tow it to my lot and charge the fee, or you're not getting that car moved, we are subject to whatever contract we agree to. And we are at the mercy. We might say, okay, then tow the car to your lot. But having options may not always guarantee courtesies. But other towing companies might say, hey, I have no problem moving your cars to the next street instead of towing it, because we are appreciative of working with you. When there are not options, we are at the mercy. Not to state that there's a monopoly, but we are at the mercy of a single entity if we do not have options. So what we're requesting with this, in its most basic form, is the ability to have options in order to try to bring a greater benefit to the residents of the city and not be at the mercy of only one business. Because we have found that some of the fees or some of the lack of consideration at request from the police or the city when we feel that a tow may have been unreasonable can be dismissed with the retort of, where else are you gonna go? That is the reason for the ordinance. But if it is in any way complicated in terms of how it reads, it is the responsibility of the administration and our attorneys working with the police to try to make it as smooth as possible. But I thought it would be important that everyone understands the intent of the ordinance.
No, appreciate that, the intent. But just a few points, if I may. The fact that the city is establishing a set price, so there's no longer, even if they call it a monopoly, let's say, whatever it is, if you had such a scenario, would play out because there's no reason for bidding. The price is set. There's no more bidding the price. In the past, it used to be different towers had to bid what they're going to charge per mile and per hookup. But now we just pull the carpet from underneath that whole process by establishing a set fee. Right now, there's a set fee no matter who the tower is. The residents will not be overcharged because of the set fee. So we took care of that problem, right? The right now, if someone's car is towed, they know where to go. So let's play out. Came whatever, someone's parked illegal in front of a fire hydrant. Well, car is towed, right? In the past, the person knew where to go. There's an address to go, where to get my car. Now what happens now? Car is towed. Where do I go? Do I go to Hallen? To go to the tower in Clifton? Who do I call?
So presently there are 3 different lots. So people would be familiar with the different lots that the present towing process may result in your car ending up in one of those lots. People generally understand that their car would be in the city. So I do agree with you to that extent. What I would say is that we did have a set fee. Unfortunately, there were times where that set fee was not the fee that was being charged. When we would bring it to the attention of whatever business may have the contract, the response again, I reiterate, was, where else are you gonna go? This is unacceptable as government and for my administration, because if we have to impose upon phone calls, let's get all the council members to call this business. Let's have the mayor call. Let's have the chief call, because we try to explain you're towing a handicapped car. PSC&G has emergency work, and we just simply need the car moved or the courtesy at the lot without them being charged $260. And the response is, that's not my problem, because there is some kind of expectation the contract will be approved. We're not saying that that's occurred. I'm just coming up with scenarios, thinking one off the top of my head. I tend to be creative. But if this was the case, and if this occurred more than a number of times throughout the year, and we have phone calls that say randomly a councilman says, I know this individual, they're handicapped. Why was their car towed? Why did the police tow it? And we tried to talk to the tower. We explained we didn't want the towing. It was taken anyway. There's a $200 fee, even though our ordinance says you're not supposed to charge anything more than the mileage. And they say, well, there was the connection fee. There was the second lot fee. The kind of truck that was used was different than the one that we needed in order to tow, because that one was busy. Options resolve that for us. So with that stated, I do get that some people might go, hey, there's a new lot. But I would come back to say that would be no different than if this towing company said, I sold this lot and I'm going to buy a new lot. And we won't base our contract on the fact that someone has to learn new information. That just happens over time.
In terms of the competitive factor, Mayor, which I think we all support, it's the foundation of the economy of this country.
Yes.
Capitalism, it's a great thing. But if, again, we have available to us as a result of passage of this ordinance, 3 towing
Yes.
groups. So my car is towed.
Yes.
Who is going to tell me where my car is?
The police department. So what occurs, because the police
department are going to know that
yes, they're responsible. The police department is always responsible for knowing where the car was taken, because most people want to know, did my car get taken or stolen? So their first point of contact would be to go to the police department, and they go, I can't find my car. I parked it on the street, and the police department immediately tells you your car was towed. Someone called, it was towed. The towing company has to tell them where they're taking the car, because the process involved the police. You know what lot it will go to. So the police will say, your car is at this lot. Oftentimes, it's been the case, depending on the extenuating circumstances that are presented, whether we give a courtesy and take you to the lot, whether we assist in getting the paperwork, whether the paperwork that you can show on your phone, your insurance, your registration will be accepted, your license. Actually, it is. Police now often accept these papers.
I'm aware of this.
So, but in terms
all
of
you have to do is take a picture of.
Yes.
For those of us who can't take a photo.
Yes.
No, I don't.
No, it's
I'm purposely making myself look like an idiot here. I don't know how to take photos.
Yes. You would be in the same situation if your car was in the lot that exists now. You would still have to go to it. You would still have to find out where it is. If you assumed you knew where it was, let's say your car got towed and you said, I've been in Passaic, I know it's on Broadway, you may still receive the response, no, it's not on Broadway. It's on the lot by Dunkin' Donuts. You go, okay, I'm familiar with that one as well. It is the goal that passing this ordinance would have an expectation that we are reasonable individuals, and we're not going to choose a lot in New York or accept a bid and someone says, well, yeah, I can meet the price, but my lot is in Pennsylvania. And the goal is to ensure that the distance from City Hall, which would be the first point of contact, no matter what the ordinance reads, is within reason the same distance as any of our other lots. And in the same way as individuals go, well, there's a new McDonald's, I don't know where it is. You will find out because you want that Big Mac. I believe if someone's going to get their car and it's within reason, the distance that we have in the other lots, they will go to that individual lot and find their car. Oftentimes, the cars that are towed are individuals that aren't from Passaic and aren't familiar with the signs. Because the same people that are familiar with our lots are pretty familiar with our ordinances. They know where the cars get towed and when they get towed. More times than not, we deal with individuals who came to visit. I believe we had an incident. There was an event, if you allow me anecdotally, just a couple of weeks ago where one of our faith-based institutions had an event at night. And there was a vehicle, a large vehicle, what is referred to as a faith bus, church bus, or whatever you want to refer to as, set on the vehicle, church bus, came from New York. And they parked in front of someone's driveway. A resident called. It was told. It was taken to the lot. Unfortunately, the time that it was taken, the lot, and it happened on a weekend, the owners who towed it said, well, they need to wait. Even though the explanation was there's a large number of people from New York and they cannot wait till Monday, and finding transportation for them, individual transportation when that bus was taking them, be hard. The back and forth, and it was resolved. Kudos to the police department and all those, and all the additional phone calls that were made, and whatever elected official that has a propensity to speak too long was called in the middle of the night and woken up about this situation. I'll let you try to figure out who is that individual.
No.
Yes, I'm not saying that if we had options, it would have went better. But it is important that everyone who does business with the city of Passaic understands that our residents and our constituents, whether they work here, visit the city, or just driving by, deserve to be treated with courtesy and respect, and never to be made to feel like they're being taken advantage of. And I make no allegations or accuse anyone, but without options, we're subject and at the mercy of anyone.
Is the disparity of what should have happened versus what did happen in terms of payments and things like that. Is it that constant within within?
Council President, allow me to answer this and please indulge me. I understand. I want to be very careful as mayor. And when I speak, I represent the city. So I want to be careful with this. Suppose that I owned hardware store or one of these local stores and used to come in and get hammers and nails and you're doing your job. And we call it ferreteria. What's that called? It's a hardware store. Ferreteria. You used to come and get your hammers, your nails. And I understood you and I know the neighborhood and I know everyone. So I'm very considerate. But over time, I've been there for a while. I retire. I leave the store to someone else, whether my own child or a different person. There's an expectation that you come to the hardware store and you say, hey, I just need a hammer and 3 nails. Your dad used to give me the nails because he knows I'm always going to buy my hammer here. My dad is my retorter, the retorter, whoever I left it with, my dad did is irrelevant to me. The nails are $10 each. And there's no other hardware stores in Passaic. So if you really need those nails, you can go travel somewhere else, but you're not going to get me to lower the price. The only hardware store. I may want to encourage other hardware stores to open up. Just so individuals, no, I don't want this hardware store to go out of business, just to understand that there are options. 3 nails you can charge if you want, but you should not charge $10 each because you're the only hardware store. So if you say your question was specific, have we had incidents, or it's trying to get to that point? We've had too many incidents where we receive the complaints, not just anecdotally, but I can assure you, the police chief, police officers, members on this council have experienced them personally. Not legitimate tolls. You parked on the sidewalk and you got told, forgive me, I don't have any sympathy for you. No one told you to park on the sidewalk. Breathe disregard of safety rules, and you endangered the lives of children who had to walk around your car and walk on the street to get around. You're a handicapped individual who parked legitimately on the street and PSC&G decided that they have to do work on that road and your car got towed, and we're trying to explain why this elderly person should get their car back, and the response is a dismissive, you can pay the fee or not, but the car's on the lot. That's unacceptable. I would hope that can be addressed separately, but if we do realize that without options, again, go back, we are at the mercy of whatever business is the sole provider of the service. We are open to compromise and to discuss, but we are not open to allowing residents of the city of Passaic to be charged hundreds and hundreds of dollars for constant towing of their vehicles when they depend on these vehicles for work, when they depend on these vehicles to take their children to school, when they depend on these vehicles to get to the store. So if it is inconvenience to try to go get your vehicle in order to return back here because it's 2 miles somewhere else, imagine the inconvenience of having your car towed 3 times in the same 2 weeks.
But you were towed as a result of a police officer saying, call
sometimes
whoever.
Sometimes.
So is there towing done? Has there been towing done?
There has been towing done where we've had to try to clarify that towing perhaps should not have occurred. And unfortunately, in cases where that has occurred, and that would be unique, the response may be, well, we can settle it on Monday.
Was a ticket actually issued? Has there been times when
cars were towed without tickets? Yes.
So isn't the officer supposed to ticket the vehicle before it can be towed?
That's why we would need to clarify when a car is towed without a ticket. Yes. There have been incidents when that has occurred. Again, I'll reiterate, unique. It is not so consistent that it happens every week. However, those incidents have occurred because if I own a property and I have a contract with the same towing company that the city has a contract with, and someone parks too close to the driveway, I'm blocking the driveway, too close to the driveway, and I call the company and say, tow the car, and they tow it. Now we have to come and clarify that was parked on the street and it should have involved a police officer. If a police officer arrives and does not check with a commander and arbitrarily says, well, I don't want to say arbitrarily, they use their judgment, say tow it. And now we go, that could have been a conversation. And we try to speak to the towing company. There's a portion that the police can handle. That ticket we can deal with in the court. The officer, the chief can state, we'll discuss the ticket. But the police have no control over telling the private tower, release the vehicle now. Because the tower can say it's on my lot, and this is the charge.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilman Schwartz.
Yes, I was wondering, is it strictly necessary for a resident to come to the police department to fill out the paperwork? They have to go to the lot to get the car. A lot of things might possibly be able to be done remotely. Is it strictly necessary for them to go to the police department, or could we construct a scenario in which the tower would be able to get the paperwork from the police department, would send the police department the registration, the license, which is clearly in his possession because he has the car, send it to the police department, have the police department then send back to him electronically a release and save the resident from having to make possibly 2 extra trips?
Yes, depending on the relationship with the individual service provider that has the contract. Meaning if they say, and there have been times when the police have called and said, release the car. Depending on the relationship, they can say, no, I need you to get a release.
No, the release has to happen, but can't it be sent electronically?
Yes, if the towing
And in
company
fact, could
says,
we make that a recommendation or requirement in contracts with the city that they start accepting things electronically in the move towards alleviating that whole burden?
yes, if the towing company says we will receive a release electronically, yes. The challenge becomes when the towing company may respond, not in this case. I'm not paying someone to go on a computer. I have someone in a truck. Bring
No,
your
we can
release
make
by
that a
hand.
requirement of the contract with the city. There's a second contract with the city to be eligible to do the city
Yes, it is
tows.
possible. If required through this governing body, and the police are capable to send an electronic release and the exchanges in terms of the
They have to have
information.
all the paperwork that have to be satisfied that there's a valid registration, insurance, et cetera, but there's no reason that
Yes,
conceivably that.
as long as the police are comfortable that they can
Yes.
verify the validity of the information that's been presented, meaning the numbers have to be verified, right? If the police can do it, whether it's electronically or in person, all of this is possible. But again, and that would make the process smoother, and it's fantastic, and I say that genuinely, fantastic suggestion. But right now, the challenge that we have is that we presently only have one option. And what we have found over the past few years is that option has resulted in our residents not receiving necessarily the best service, whether customer service or services in terms of fees, and that has resulted in many complaints, many consistent complaints.
Council, thank you, Council. Councilwoman Mellon.
Yeah, also, because one of the things I find very odd is that they tow on the weekend, but you cannot get your car on the weekend. And that you incur more money. And a lot of times we understand our residents, they're working families. So if your car gets towed, you go, let's say you find out within the hour, so you have to wait till Monday. As it's been stated on this day, is we depend on these cars. So I think also whoever applies it the same way you tow, you should have someone to release the car if the person is able to provide their documents, because we are dependent of these cars.
Sure. Councilwoman, if I may, so here's how it practically plays out if we have options. Let's say we call someone on the weekend and they say, we don't have anyone available on the weekend, come get your car on Monday. Now the chief and the police can say, we don't want to call this company. Not on weekends, because we are aware that they do not respond on the weekend. We can now choose the company that tends to respond on the weekend because there's a relationship. And we often base those relationships on past experiences. We want to continue a relationship with you or we don't. However, when we only have one option, we are at the mercy of that one option. If they go, we don't have anyone on the weekends, we just don't have anyone on the weekends. So what happens is there's almost this imploring, please come out. This resident really needs their car. Please come out. And the individuals receiving the car could say, well, or the ones that are on the lot, maybe I'll come out, maybe I don't.
Why can't we require as part of this ordinance that they be open on Saturday and Sunday?
We do require, there's an expectation. But you don't have to adhere to it because you're the only.
Is that by ordinance, Mayor?
That they have to be, there is an expectation on the contract that individuals can receive their cars when they need them, as long as everything is taken care of, their release, and you can contact the tower. However, if the tower says, not available,
Why can't we, as part and parcel of this change, why can't we require?
Because we have made requirements in the past with only one option, and when they don't adhere to it, we have no teeth. So just to put it plainly, we say, if you don't adhere to it, we're not going to do business with you anyway. And they look at us and say, you've been doing business with us for 14 years, and you're going to continue to do business with us for another 14 years. And there is no teeth to this threat of removing them as an option.
Contractually, couldn't we, if they were not open on a weekend and they signed a document saying that they would be, can't we include a fine in that they would then be responsible for paying to this?
We could. The problem is, and again, if the goal is to not make a convoluted process, if now through additional legislation we're going to go after the one entity and then go back and forth to see whether they actually violated the terms of the agreement, whether they explained that the extenuating circumstances resulting in the towing and their one tower was sick, their mother got sick and went to the hospital, and how could we find them because their driver's mother got sick, and we're going back and forth, it makes it more complicated. The truth is we have had a number of negative incidents. We're not trying to remove the service. We are trying to provide options to say, we will continue to work with you, but understand that the city of Passaic is not at your mercy. If you provide quality service, you will remain the priority call for this city. But if you at any time are trying to take advantage of our residents or those who come to our city and visit, regardless of the other conditions or circumstances, we will go to another option. But as of right now, if there's an expectation, no matter what level or quality of service I give you, my contract's getting renewed. That is not the message that I want my administration to give. And I would hope that the city is not giving, because we are, and we talk about it when we have garbage, when we're bringing in a contract, they're going to deal with sewer lines. Have they given us good service before? And if they do, we renew. If not, we constantly say we want more options. When it comes to towing, our approach should be consistent. We want more options. And if we have more options and you do a good job, you will be number one, our priority. And if you do not do a good job, we will call the other priority. And that list can change depending on who provides the service well.
Councilman Monk, is your light still on?
Yes, Councilman.
Did you wish to?
Yes, please, thank you. If I may, regarding Council President's point about some type of penalty or fees if they're not open on weekends, whatever it might be. Can we add this to the ordinance that the tower needs to be available on weekends? Mm-hmm. And if they're not that there's a penalty, but if they're not available, they can't charge those days for storage. This way, it's no fee. We're not going after them for fee, penalties, and so on and so forth. But at least this way, the resident, whoever it is who wanted to get their car out, they couldn't because the tower was not in compliance to make it available. They can't charge for those days.
Yes, we can add that.
That's something which would benefit, and would see that the towers would realize that we want you to be here for the people. Okay, we're not looking. It's benefit got towed with whatever the reason was, right? But we want our residents serviced properly.
Yes, and I would say that is definitely something we should add. I still believe we should have options for this reason, because if we do not, oftentimes, not that this would occur, where you save on one end, you may find that the fees will be added on the other, and we may find some additional fee for towing on a Wednesday.
It's here, but it's here. This ordinance is what they can charge.
And it has been here. I do want to allow me to state this, and I want to be very clear. There are limits on how much can be charged. There was an expectation of this governing body that those would be the limits in terms of charge. What apparently has occurred, and this is business, when you're left with only one option, individuals find creative ways to charge more If they choose or if they want to, and because we have to wait to deal with the contract and we do not have other options immediately available, we are at the mercy of these additional charges because by the time it comes to us, it comes the next day. When you're a desperate individual whose car got towed and they're saying $350 or you don't get your car, that police officer is left with the option of calling who? The mayor, the entire city council. Can you please show up to this towing company and remind them of the law? Can we call the attorney to show up? Who's going to enforce it? No, they pay the $350, they get their car, and then they send the letter, or they come to the council meeting 2 weeks later, and they ask us to address it, and we say we will next year when we renew the contract. And then for whatever reason, the same entity gets the contract, and a message goes out to the community, nothing will be done. The option, again, is not intended to eliminate the possibility of this one contractor to be able to receive business or provide the service, but to remind everyone in the city of Passaic or who does business in the city of Passaic, it is a privilege to provide service to our residents, and your fees should reflect that. Now, you have the best product, charge the best fee. God bless you, that's capitalism. You make the best burger, charge $15. What you don't get to be is the only burger place in Passaic, because somehow we're not approving other burger places, and now you're charging 20, and you can cook your burger any way you want and respond if you don't like it. You can go somewhere else.
Mayor, I'm going to ask, there does not seem to be unanimity right now on this ordinance. Would the administration consider putting this on for our next meeting and members of this council having further discussions with the mayor and the administration?
Council President, traditionally, I've always responded yes, because I believe it is a courtesy that should be extended. With this, I would ask if you would allow. I don't know if there isn't a complete consensus. I don't believe it's required. I believe there may be differences of opinions, but I do want to share that we consider this carefully. And we appreciate existing relationships in our city, and especially those who have provided services for many years. But we are on the record. There are families that are watching us. And I think in this instance, it is extremely important that we express so many families, and at this point, I'm going to be a little more candid and direct. So many individuals have paid too much to get their cars back. So many individuals have paid hundreds of dollars to have an individual employee deal with them with what I would say disrespect when they're going there trying to explain, this is my car and I barely have money to be told, well, that's your problem, not mine. And I want to respond, well, you know what? It's not their problem, it's ours. We're elected to protect those who are vulnerable and can't speak up for themselves. Unfortunately, those individuals can't come here and make that decision. So if the goal is to create an ordinance that includes all of the suggestions, yes, my response is yes. But Council President, I want you to know, because I've always been transparent with this council, I believe in this case that the options are necessary. And I will definitely work with this city council to make that possible in the smoothest way, because I think Councilman Monk's statements and yours as well are correct. We don't want to make it complicated for residents. God forbid, in trying to resolve one issue, we create 10 more. We never wanted to do that.
Forgive me, I would be prepared to vote on this right now if there was a requirement that the towing company be opened for service on Saturdays and Sundays.
I think that's a great suggestion.
I think that there might be some other suggestions that would further bolster the ordinance. I have no problem with anything that's in the ordinance right now, but I must tell you, having had those phone calls, as we all have had, if we're going to change it, thank God, let's change it correctly.
Yes,
and I think that affording members the opportunity to further explore this issue. When Mr. Fernandez and I went over the agenda in advance, as we always do, I said to him, this is going to be a long discussion. It's a fundamental change, and there are relationships, and we all know them. But with your permission and with the council's permission, I think that if we commit ourselves to entertaining this issue uh, at our next meeting and use the period of time between now and May 11, affording additional ideas, changes, modifications, whatever, I think that would be helpful. I don't think that 2 weeks would be damaging to anyone.
It would not, Council President, once again, I want to reiterate, and I wanted to put it on the record that every member, I believe, as mayor, every member on this council wants to ensure that the residents of Passaic and those who, whether they work, visit, or come here, are being treated fairly. And that the reason why we're going to look at this closer, scrutinize every part of it, is to try to find a way that we can make sure that we're being fair, both to business, but to our residents. And the only concern that we have here is that, I'm best describe it, we are not rigid as elected officials. We have to be open-minded. So when we deal with businesses that are rigid, they're not willing to be open-minded. It's inconsistent with our approach, and that's why we're looking at this. In no way do I want to disparage a particular business. Again, I'll reiterate, I want to speak in general terms. All my examples are general. They're not specific to any business. But as mayor, I do want to put on the record, and I think this is healthy, that I believe we need options, and that sometimes it's good that we all disagree, but I appreciate the fact that we can all come to an agreement that time isn't going to take away, because this has been there in the same way for many, many years, and a few more weeks won't make a difference.
Good. I appreciate that, sir, very much.
Council President, I just
Council-
wanted to finish my thoughts.
Please.
Don't mind if I
That
may.
means don't interrupt.
Okay.
No problem.
I'm on board here, okay, just in terms of the concern about where we're going with this. This is to get this done, but as Council President said earlier, if we're going to make changes, let's just try to just incorporate other issues that we all have experienced from people from all those phone calls, like to get their cars out this Saturday or Sunday. I might just want to also just make another point, if I may, just to make it easier for those people that have their cars too, that there should be on the city website, maybe it's there already, a list of potential locations where your car might be. If it's open, if this is totally open to any tower within a certain amount of miles from the city, that, and I don't know how long it takes for the police department for it to land up in their records. If the car is towed at 10 o'clock in the morning, right? At what point does, if someone goes out to City Hall, they can tell them, yes, your car is at this and this lot. Is that 20 minutes? Is it 2 hours? Is it 3 hours? I don't know what the process is.
That can be almost instantaneous.
Yeah.
Okay.
Someone comes in, their car is not parked in front of the house or wherever. They park in the driveway. As soon as they come in, we'll all over the area. Did someone tow a car from so-and-so location? Yes, I did. Where's the car? So-and-so.
Got it.
Almost instantaneous.
Okay, good. Good.
I mean, we don't, I listened to the conversation, and Mayor, it's correct. Some of the issues about going on the weekends, for instance, the example that we get is that the toll worker, there's only one toll worker on the weekend. He's busy doing something else. I'll get to that. Person needs to go to the airport, and you get a car and go pick them up.
Right.
Going to all this.
The tower is doing another car, another job, or so on and so forth. I'll get back in contact with you. You know,
Okay, great. No,
that's
thank you.
one of the issues. Just one last thing, which I just put it out there. Victims of crime, their car gets towed because the vehicle needs to be processed.
Mhm.
They're going to get charged for the toll. Now they're being victimized twice. You know, we say, well, victim witness advocacy group at the county will then maybe reimburse you, something like that. I don't know if that's necessarily fair, but that's something that we see from a police perspective.
where the detective then has to try to resolve that problem. But I am, you know, with the administration on this big time. You have to
The
give,
unwillingness to be open to
Yeah.
working with our police or the governing body makes it much more difficult. But many of the, and the statements that the chief made, I think answer one of the questions. Sometimes the police have to call the tower and say, did you tow a car? Because it was not directed. There are other specific written restrictions, meaning a vehicle should not be sold unless it goes through the city, no matter how long it stayed there, that we find sometimes when the person goes, the car is no longer on the lot. We are trying to be very clear here that they must work in line with the expectation. Many of the changes can be made contractually, not by ordinance, but again, because we have always worked together, and even if there's differences in perspective, this governing body has always remained true to its word to the residents of this city. Every one of these council members, the decisions will be made based on what's the best outcome for all the residents. And we must never forget that business owners are part of our constituency. They should be treated fair as well. But Council President, as to your question, and I think it's extremely important, I would not be this adamant. I would not be this involved on an ordinance if it was not a direct result of a large volume of individuals telling us, Mayor, I'm paying $300 to get my car out because it got towed unfairly, and the cops have called, and the councilman called, and you called, and the tower goes, it's under new management. You don't like it, you have no other option. That's another just hypothetical.
Yeah.
No specific incident.
An ordinance is an ordinance. Obviously, there needs to be some flexibility. But whoever is towing, my concern is that that different people will pay different amounts, right? And that's obviously, a problem. If it's the same thing, it's the same thing. With the council's permission, and the mayor as well, I'd like to suggest, if I may, that we take this ordinance, take from now until May 11th, that we look at the ordinance from now until then and come back with some ideas that can be implemented on May 11th. And thereby giving out.
If I may, I just finished my thoughts. That's okay.
It's what the council joined me.
I responded to the question.
Table and more.
Councilman Monk.
Thank you. I never had so much patience before in my life. I would just ask for clarity, if you don't, okay, that, I was just reading up on private towers. If you have a private lot, you have to post, 36-inch sign, who the tower is, and so on and so forth. And it says in here, when a car is towed from a private parking lot, the lot has to be within 1 mile of the city boundaries. And I would hope that that we would maintain that same restriction when the city tows. Just like if Dunkin' Donuts tows a car, the tower has to be within 1 mile of the city boundary. That when the city tows the car, we should at least be within the same requirements. Again, not to, to make it as least inconvenient for the person that owns the car. And I didn't see anywhere else in any of these ordinances where it specifies any distance. So I guess it could be that we do fall under that ordinance of within 1 mile for this anytime the city tows as well.
If I may, just the one component that the council's focusing on the ordinance because that's what's on. What's missing is the contract and the request for proposals for that contract, which has the weekends already. It has the mile away from our border already, right? So that's the discussions are true, and that's kind of why the mayor said it's part of it could be made part of the contract. So we're saying is, if you want it to be 1 mile and it's 2 miles, that's a discussion that could be put in the contract. Electronic virtual release of cars be made part of the RFP and the contract. Weekend hours and fees for the release on weekend hours, part of the RFP and part of the contract.
That is, and I appreciate that, and I'm gonna just say the conversation on the contract and whether it's contractual, we can have, however, to the councilman's point, yes, creating ordinances does it. Did you think so?
It did.
Agrees with you. The thing is, if I'm speaking about teeth, then I have to be fair in saying adding things to an ordinance adds additional teeth to a contract. That's not bad. Perhaps we can also consider the process of booting cars. And we have had incidents where vehicles have been booted on private lots and had people say, I only accept cash. Perhaps we could explore that if you're gonna allow for booting, whether it's a booting, for those who don't know, is when they put a lock on your car and you cannot move it, which unfortunately it has occurred on private property. And when individuals go to pay and say, well, you give me $300 cash, or I'm not gonna remove the boot, it's gonna get towed. So you have a $300 fee and a towing fee. Perhaps we can look to combine our approach to ensure, one, that there is an electronic payment option, whether it's your vehicle's getting booted or not. That helps individuals that don't have cash instantly. Anytime we can add ordinances, and if we can do it in a responsible way, and I think considering some of the suggestions that have been made by Councilman Monk, Councilman Shorts, and some of the private suggestions that have come from Councilman Mello, Councilman Love, and Councilman Garcia, and of course, the direction of our council president, if we can come to a consensus and create an ordinance that makes the process smoother and protects our residents and considers the business, there is no possible loss here. And I think a few weeks won't make a difference. And I think it's good that these points have been raised. And for those who watch and think all our meetings are so simple, thank you for joining us this evening and seeing just one example of what sometimes occurs outside of the meeting and in the meeting. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Mayor. With the council's permission, I'd like to ask if you have any ideas that would be incorporated in this ordinance. Would you please jot them down, write them down, and send them to the clerk so that she can coordinate them, eliminate duplication, etc. We've heard several ideas that may or may not make sense in terms of the electronic, in terms of weekends, in terms of other issues as well. I think if we take an attitude of dealing with the ordinance and dealing with it as a whole, rather than piecemeal, we might better serve our constituents and the city itself. That being said, we'd like to ask the council to table the motion to May 11th without prejudice for the purpose of that further discussion. Is there a motion to table, please?
If I may, because I don't think we closed the public hearing.
We have someone that wants to speak.
I'm sorry?
We still have a resident that wishes to speak.
We have okay, I'm terribly sorry. Then I obviously hold. Yes, I don't look at my phone.
We have someone on the line with their phone number ending in 0035.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to be short because this took really, really long. I appreciate it. 3 quick things, please. My name is Yosef Wolf. I live at 71 Spring Street. I want to thank the mayor for being very pointed and candid in not just letting this just move on into the abyss, because I myself a few years ago had a car towed. I cannot for the life of me remember why, but the only thing I remember is the way I was treated when I needed to get my car back. And absolutely a monopoly can allow such a way to be treated. I do want to ask, I do want to mention that I think nowadays a lot of people, insurance cards, a lot of police departments even allow it to be on the phone. Maybe if you're part of the ordinance, you're able to get your car back with insurance card shown on the phone. Maybe that would help. And the third thing I want to ask, a little bit in jest, but a little bit seriously as well. I was wondering if the Honorable Mayor Hector Laura garage parking deck is strong enough to accommodate a tow truck, maybe the city can, it shouldn't be too far at the beginning. Maybe the city can be open to having its own lot, especially we don't even know down the line if the lots will be close by, like everyone's suggesting. This will be right next to the police station, and whoever tows will bring the car over there, and it will be pretty straightforward for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else?
No, sir.
Council President, before you go, forgive me, because there was a question, and I think it is extremely important that this is explained. We've actually explored that option. I would love for the city to take over towing. I would love to have our lot. I would love it. It is not practical for this reason. If the city took over towing and had our own lot, it is not the Hector Laura garage parking deck. I don't know what that. I could barely fit one car in my driveway. That's the only thought. It's the cities, and it's a result of a collaborative effort and amazing state representatives and council members with a vision. But please understand, because I love your suggestion. I'll admit it. And there are many things that I want to do, and oftentimes are restricted. If we had a lot and we towed vehicles, we are now liable for anything that occurs to the vehicle on the city lot. There's a break-in on the vehicle, we're liable. If someone claims that their car was operating fine, and when we towed it, now the engine doesn't work, the city is now responsible for paying for that. If the car you find has 20 scratches on it and you claim when it was towed, it was a 1967 classic model Dodge, and it is an antique, we're now liable. That would be one of the major restrictions, because when these individuals bid and they receive the contract, they also take on the responsibilities of maintaining the vehicles in a safe and secure location, and anything that occurs to that vehicle. Someone mentioned potential break-ins. If someone believes that the city now has a lot, when we're holding vehicles and someone breaks in, takes catalytic converters, we know that's a concern around the state. Radios or anything, GPSs, or maybe you left your wallet and you say, it was probably in my car. The city's responsible. We would be tied up in litigation if we claim we're not responsible. It would not be practical, but it would be ideal. Thank you.
Council President, if I may.
Councilman Love.
Just a few things. And Mayor, respectfully, I hear what you're saying, but what would be the difference if someone fell on the steps of City Hall, right, in terms of liability, or fell in the courtyard, right? Or for whatever reason got stuck in the elevator, respectfully. And because I'm trying to see if there's a way that we can explore that idea, right? I'm sure that even companies who do tow have those insurances that will cover those types of things as well. And I agree with you, and maybe litigation, but that might be something that we need to explore, so that we can kind of control the narrative of what we want citizens to go through, in your words. So I just wanted to say that part. It's not to dispute what you're saying, but it's to kind of see if there's a way to explore it. The second thing, Council President, and I guess this is more to the attorney, instead of tabling, because the suggestions that I heard were kind of to give it some teeth, as the mayor said, in the mayor's words, rather than a transformation of the ordinance. So my question is there a need to table it, or with some of the suggestions that was going out there?
The suggestions that are being made are not de minimis changes.
And that's the question that I wanted to get clarification on. By tabling this, do we push this back even further? It's rare that our administration, well, not rare, but our administration comes to us with such passion and such conviction about an issue. And I'm just concerned about tabling and prolonging the situation that administration is adamant about moving forward. So just a suggestion.
Appreciate the suggestion. Other comments on the ordinance? Before us, we have any number of considerations to approve, to not approve, to table. What is the pleasure of this council? Councilwoman Mello?
Um, well, I think if we are, because I will definitely like to see the extended hours, is, that's one of the biggest concerns, the weekends, because if it gets towed on a weekend, people end up paying an exuberant amount of money. Because the rate, I believe, was 150, sometimes they've ended up paying 500. And that is a lot for residents. We understand this is a working city. So, I mean, if we're gonna, as it has been mentioned, if we're really going to take into consideration the residents and add information that is really going to benefit the constituents, and I mean the business itself will still benefit. I mean, we can definitely. I'm in agreement with tabling it, but with the understanding is just to add these make these strong arguments to make sure that it is added and that our residents don't continue to suffer.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Is there a motion that you'd like to make, ma'am?
Yeah, maybe.
And the motion is?
Yeah, as I stated, if we are going to table this to make sure these changes are added, and we also expand, yes.
Councilwoman and Council President, it's important, I know the attorney would have to stress this, any significant change, and we are doing significant change, it will not be read on second reading. De minimis changes to an ordinance will not require any change, but if I am correct, if we make significant changes to the ordinance, then it is a new ordinance and will become a first reading. As administration, I'm open to this. I believe it is better that we do it right than we rush it. So I do agree, but I believe it's important that we all are clear. Any significant changes to the ordinance, it becomes a new ordinance.
Thank you, ma'am.
That's correct. So you need a first reading.
With the
Is that-
understanding that these changes will take.
Councilman Long, is that your line?
No, that's.
Councilman Long, is that your line?
Yeah, yes, it is. Thank you, Council President. I think there's pretty much consensus of where we want to go with this. I think everyone's on board. The question is, do we vote on this tonight and let it pass? Being if we have to redo it anyway, we could vote on this, let this pass, and then just redo it and add in the things that want to be added if we're going to start the process anyway, or just table this and start over. So I'm fine either way. I'm fine voting on it tonight, and then we just make the changes in 2 weeks, start over, and we just, so I'm open to either way. To submit.
Other thoughts? Daniel, Councilman Schwartz?
I'm gathering that a lot of the changes that we're requesting aren't part of this document. They're really part of a separate agreement with the towers, and really perhaps should be done in parallel or independent of this document. They may not directly impact this. This is just a list of a price list. It doesn't really define our relationship with other vendors. There is really going to need to be a second document which lists the requirements to be able to participate. And that's really the document where a lot of these suggestions are going to end up on.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Garcia.
I agree with Councilman Schwartz. Most of the stuff that we're trying to change or bring into the ordinance are already in this ordinance. So I think we can pass this tonight, and then if we gotta revisit and do any changes, we can do it later.
Councilman Monk.
Yeah, thank you. It's just, it's one thing I just don't understand in terms of the process of currently there's a contract, right? With the contract is with how many towers? Okay, so the idea is and when does that contract expire?
It expired.
So currently there is no contract right now, right?
How long ago did it
So,
expire?
I don't know off the top of my head, a couple months. January probably.
So this is why I think it's important that it's part of the ordinance. Because if we pass this ordinance and we rely on the contract, there is no contract with any tower. today. So therefore, if the city picks ABC Tower tomorrow, okay, and ABC Tower, there's no contract with them, right? They just randomly pick a tower because there is no contract with anyone. There's no teeth.
That's not,
That's
that's not
not-
the process.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
so
not-
what is the process?
That's why I think as you were saying, I'm like, I think we need to get into the process,
Yes.
right? Okay. So we're just not gonna pull out of the sky towers, right? So you do a request for proposals with the items that were specifically mentioned this evening, right? That you need to be within 1 mile of our border, that you have to allow for electronic release of cars, that you have to have weekend hours from this hour to that hour at a set fee, right? Like, then you put it out there to the towers that are meet this 1 mile radius, let's say, for arguments. I apologize because I think it's a 1 or 2 miles. We're kind of in the ballpark.
Mr. Fernandez, does it have to come back to the council?
Well, no, it does not. If the ordinance passes, the contract can have all those items in it and not require the ordinance. The RFP itself, right, which would then come back for entrance into a contract, is separate than this. So it's not going out to a formal bid. If you do this, right, the whole point of getting the options like the mayor requested, by law, you either bid it out and you get that one tower, or you do this fee ordinance and it allows you to enter into contracts with multiple towers. That's why the main reason why we did this. But there is an outline of what it is those towers that are going to contract with us have to follow, which clearly, based on this conversation and the mayor's discussion, we're making sure it's that 1 mile radius, that there's electronic release of cars, and that there's weekend hours for release of the vehicles. And that would be made part of the contract. So
The contract can be changed whenever.
Contract would be based on.
Right, the contract could be changed based on.
Someone answers the contract and we use the person X number of times, and then they come and say that they can't do it anymore, so the contract expires, right?
Or like the
It's
mayor said,
it's the ordinance, which is the fundamental. All of these, all these items are fundamental to what it is that we want to see. The contract that you're talking about is negotiated by the administration as is required. But the fundamentals we're talking about in terms of weekends, in terms of the electronic, that's the fundamental.
Yes.
The fee schedule is just that. It's a fee schedule. You'll forgive me, but I think that the ordinance is the commentary.
Yes.
The commentary is what it is that we're trying to achieve in terms of what's being charged. Frankly, it's all another language to me, right?
If you go to Councilman Schwartz's point and Councilman Monk, that all can be done after.
But if I
It
may,
can be done after, but forgive me, Mayor, this has been outstanding since January. And one would argue that it's been done this way for countless generations, right? That if we give ourselves an absolute due date of accomplishment, and if it's a month or 2 months, I'll prepare to give the 2 months or however long it is to come up with something that's valid and real. I mean, what are we passing here? A rate
Council President,
schedule?
As to your point, and again, I'm fine, as Councilman Monk shared, that either way would be fine. But the question that was posed was, would the council be open to passing it tonight? And 6 of the members stated yes.
And I plan on asking, as soon as you're done, for
Understood.
a motion to pass.
But the clarity, because it must be clear on our approach. If it is to create an ordinance to add teeth, it does not significantly change the intent of this on second reading. The ordinance can always be added. If we want to significantly change this, it is no longer the same ordinance. So we will go on for another month or 2. However, right now for Tony,
We do not have other options. We do not have other. If tomorrow someone gets told and they're getting charged $500, if next month someone is told and they're getting charged $500, we will go back and forth. We'll make the phone calls. We will say very clearly, Councilman, can you make a phone call to them? Chief, can you make a phone call to them? If the response continues to be, this is what you have, take it or leave it, but you're not going to leave it, we are at the mercy of the tourists. We are not going to reimburse any of the residents that get told. It is not the city's role. Our ability is to address it from here. The council has complete authority to take it off and not vote tonight. However, the delayed process will result in harm. Not significant harm, but in terms of fees, let me qualify that. I have not figured out how to hold the sole entity that has the services accountable to the point that makes them charge or not sell vehicles when they're not supposed to, because they're not supposed to sell vehicles off of their lot unless it goes to our police chief, and it has occurred. Without options, the longer we delay, the more of these incidents we
The
will.
contract, forgive me, sir, expired in January.
Yes.
It is now April.
So you're saying we can go to another tour as of tomorrow because there is no contractor?
In terms of how the law would work on this, I'm fine with that.
I don't believe
I'm
we
fine.
can, but we'll explore that.
I'm fine with that. And it seems to me that we're contractless, and we've been so since January, right? And another month or 6 weeks is not going to dramatically change anything.
For those who have not been told.
Well, the same thing could be said for the January to April. Why didn't we have something out there already? I mean, there's any number of ways to look at it.
They can be, however, and again, you know what? This would be back and forth. This is one of the points of disagreement. We will agree to disagree on this approach. I believe that we have received so many complaints that have gone to police, to administration. It has been too many. We have tried to explain to the agency, you do not have carte blanche in our city. You cannot simply tow when you want, charge what you want. We have no options. And the response has been, we are away. We're on vacation, we'll deal with you Monday. We cannot by force go onto the lot and remove the vehicle. This is not about a disagreement with the council, but rather a disagreement and a very clear displeasure with the service we are receiving with a particular contractor. Options will, I believe, create better relationships with this contractor. The message sent is that this body will consider options. I would love to continue the service with the contractor. They have lots in the city. They will continue to overcharge residents, tow vehicles, and we have change ordinance. We do not tow for street cleaning. We are trying everything. This was at my direction. I eliminated the towing. I did not want to see cars towed arbitrarily. I do not believe it's fair to have a car towed off a vehicle. People pay for their cars. They pay enough for taxes. They pay enough for fees. They don't need to pay $300 to $500 to have their car towed. So if there's a different way to compel this business to understand that the governing body here will not accept having residents overcharged or mistreated when they're going to get their vehicles or towed, you need to wait, and we will deal with you when we're ready. It is a privilege to receive a contract by the city of Passaic. It is a privilege to provide service. This governing body considers every contract carefully. We have debated sometimes for contracts that have less effect than this. This particular business has taken advantage of residents. This is not anecdotal, and now I will not speak in generalities. I personally have witnessed them take advantage. I have seen them dismiss phone calls from police, from my office, and even disregard the request of council members. I do not want to be in a position where I am pleading, almost having to beg a business to consider what is right for our residents. And if they cannot adhere to what we have placed before them, I don't care how powerful they are, I don't care how much money they are, and I don't care how long they've been here. They will understand that they will be held accountable by this governing body and myself. And they cannot overcharge our residents. If we work so hard to not have cars towed when they're street cleaning, to not have handicapped vehicles towed, then they don't get to circumvent that process and tell us what other options do you have. So with that stated, as I mentioned, I would rather the path of least resistance, but we must be clear, if it is taken off tonight and not voted, it is a new ordinance and it will be deleted.
Council President.
Will the administration consider that if this ordinance is passed, that at our next meeting, the administration will submit to the council an ordinance requiring any tower that is going to be used must be open on Saturdays and Sundays between 9 and 5?
Yes, and include the suggestion of the councilman for electronic options and go through the attorney, because I do believe, and I'll say again, the suggestions given are right, and the delay makes sense. But I do believe that we have to be clear. Yes, your answer is yes. The answer that I want to give you, yes, sir.
Are there any other items that people feel so passionate
Can
about?
just one last point, if I may?
Please.
Mayor, I think the council is fully backing you and feels the passion that you have for this. We just want to add even more. We make it even more restrictive by adding this into the
I
ordinance.
agree with the team. I think you're
Okay,
right.
and if I miss one,
Councilman, it's hard to hear you.
I'm sorry. I just think the reason why it's important to add it into the ordinance, you can have a contract, but if there's a contract that says a tower has to be open from 9 to 5 on Saturday, someone who sits at home and goes on the city website has no clue that that is such a law. And therefore, if a tower says, I'm sorry, you can't get it today, they think that's how it is, and they pay for an extra 3 days. But it's an ordinance, and they go in, they Google, put the word tower, as I just did myself here, right? They see exactly what the requirements are. They can see that the tower has to be open from 9 to 5 on Saturday and Sunday. They know they have a problem. They know they have what to do. Otherwise, people don't know about it. And that's the difference if it's in the ordinance or it's just sitting in some contract, sitting in some file cabinet.
And I agree. I think the ordinance is important. And yes, we will commit to have the ordinance with the suggestions of the council. And I don't want to take up more time, but I want anyone who's watching to know, I believe the council wants to protect the interests of the residents. This is in no way an argument as to whether or not one of us wants to protect the other. It is about responsible government. And because the legislative body wants to make sure that this has actual legal support, that is what we're discussing. I know everyone else hears it, but someone may watch our meeting and I know our council is tasked with that responsibility to make sure the decisions that are made have a legal standing. I admit that because I sit in that office every single day and deal with the constituents come in, that I take the role of trying to express their frustration, utilizing my platform to amplify their voices.
Councilman Monk?
No, I'm all good. Thank you.
It's Councilman.
Okay. Councilman
The
Love.
other one, the other pain in the neck. Mayor, you just hit it right on nose where you talked about the legal, right, aspect of it. And through the council president, through the chair, I'm going to respectfully, I don't want to belabor this whole point, but it's very important. Respectfully ask that our attorney be involved with some language that clarifies when the police should be involved and when towing is allowed without police involvement. It should be specific and clear because there's no way that there should be confusion about why and when our police should be involved with towing. So if that's possible, Council President, through the chair, once again, respectfully, I would like the attorney to explore some language on police involvement and how it should be done.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman.
Yes, one more thing also, because I believe in the past, they were supposed to, whenever you got told, you were also supposed to have a list of what you were being charged. I believe the towing company had a responsibility of providing you, and I know a lot of times it was not.
Like an itemized bill.
Yes,
instead of
please,
just the
itemize,
general
clear
charge on the
language
receipt.
where people can understand, because again, some of our residents, just, they need simple language. Sometimes reading these ordinance and these a little bit complicated. And if we could have also translated in different languages, if it's possible as well. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mayor, question.
Yes.
Do cars currently get towed without the police?
Yes, it has occurred in the past. That's why when our chief had mentioned earlier, sometimes they have to call the towing company and say, did you take this vehicle? And they get verified.
How,
Other times,
by what right does,
I had mentioned earlier, and I gave one scenario. Let's say you have a towing contract with Rainieri's for Gary's Cookies. I think Renee Grace once mentioned she wanted cookies. Your parking lot, Rainieri's, which is the existing, or G towing, or any other towing, whatever towing, that was the first one came to mind. If a car parks too close to that driveway, then you call and they come and take it off. And then the exchange is that was on the street, not on your lot. You shouldn't have towed it. And the tower says, I have the contract with the property owner. It was within an inch of the driveway. I towed it.
so
Now
doesn't that become another matter entirely?
It does become another matter.
That's a civil matter between.
It is, but you've asked me if it occurred, so I'm giving you a scenario that it has occurred. The challenge that we have, whether it's a civil matter or not, that's a separate argument, is there is no other option to turn and say, if you continue to operate this way, we will simply call another towing company, because you, being the sole provider of this service, have not been acting in good faith when our police have told you we cannot have you towing from the street. And you're saying my interpretation, which is subjective, my interpretation is if the street comes into the driveway, then I perceive the car being in part on that private property, so I took it.
So effectively,
Yes.
forgive me, because I'm just
Yes.
appalled that on a city street,
Yes.
cars would be towed without a police officer directing them to?
Yes, and at times, we have made the mistake and told a vehicle that
We're
we
not
shouldn't
talking
have
about
towed.
private lots. We're not talking about quick check. We're talking about on a street.
There are times where cars have been towed when they should not have been towed, and we've had to clarify. Honest mistakes. Those are honest mistakes. What happens is when those honest mistakes occur, more than the amount of times that we feel it should occur, be subjective, we go, how honest is the mistake? But when we do not have an option and say, look, if this practice continues, then we can go to another option, then the practice continues and we're always judging, was this an honest mistake or was it not? But it has occurred, yes.
Listen,
It has occurred.
I've given support to this based upon the agreement of something before us at our next meeting in terms of weekends. And certainly I would agree that competitive spirit is a basis of American capitalism, right? And that is always the case. I'm just, all right, for lack of anything else and looking at the hour, is there an objection if we take a vote?
I have one more comment.
Councilman Schwartz.
Based on that comment of cars occasionally being towed from public property,
It has occurred, I wouldn't say
would
occasionally.
it be appropriate in this very ordinance to say that it is unlawful to collect any money for cars towed from public property which are not directed by a police officer or the owner of the vehicle?
I would have to leave that to the attorney, because even though it makes common sense, if there is an emergency, if there is an emergency situation, and I can't think of one now, whether it's PSC&G, whether it's a storm, whether a council member, fire, and a firefighter said remove the vehicle. Outside of emergency situations, the regular practice should be that all towing should occur by the direction of police.
I'm not saying that it should occur. Of course, it should be unlawful to charge if it was done otherwise.
If the fire department ordered the towing because of a fire, because they were blocking a fire hydrant, the fire department would have to be included. If we limit it
Yes,
and
of
someone
course.
argues the police didn't direct it, the fire department.
Emergency situation.
Yes, but that's what I'm saying. The law to a certain extent, though it's interpreted by the judges, unfortunately for us, becomes a little more black and white. The spirit of what you're saying, yes, adding the ordinance, I
Put the
believe that would be up to
explicit in
attorney.
here. We're saying with priceless, it's explicit. You may not
Yes.
charge anything if it was towed unlawfully.
Yes, Councilman. I will confess, I believe towing should be a last resort. And in emergency situations, yes, it should be an authority, a public safety authority
Whatever.
should make that decision. If I may,
Whatever.
that's the only part that I would add, a public safety authority or designated official of the government, something that would allow for whether it's a fire or a police officer. But yes, I agree with you, that should be added.
And that's what I was seeking, that type of language, for my statement from our attorney.
But I would seek for the attorney to let us know whether that already exists or not. Because if it does exist, it should not be occurring and we need to address it in a different way, which I would
Chief,
argue contract is addressing.
Chief, if I can ask, if a towing company, I'm parked on the street, a towing company comes and takes my car, right? Isn't that against the law?
You probably would have some type of action, civil, something like that, yeah. And
I mean, isn't it
Fine.
carjacking?
not carjacking, but maybe some form of that, the car, or
Possession of something that is not yours.
There's an implied relationship, I would ask the attorney, between the actual business that has a contract with the city and an expectation that their towing is directed by the city. So here's a real scenario. PSE&G, which is the utility company we're familiar with, has on occasion put no parking signs up without going through our police. That should not occur. We address it with the utility company. All no parking signs for work that occurs must go through the police and traffic. There have been times where utility companies or construction individuals are going to do work, have placed no parking sign. Tow company comes in, sees the vehicle, no parking. The person says, we can't do the work without this car, it gets towed. We try to clarify and say, this car shouldn't have been towed. The police wasn't there. They took it based on a sign that was not directed by the police. The towing company says, well, then the police should have never allowed the sign. Why didn't they go around to remove the sign? The resident says, none of this has to do with me. I'm being charged $300. I need my car today. The towing company says, you're not getting your car until you give us some money. The resident says, here's your $300. Give me my car. Now we're going to a civil matter.
What I don't understand, and Mayor, I must tell you, I am thoroughly confused as to how a towing company without a police officer present.
Yes. In that scenario, that's how it would occur. We could go to them and say, if you continue to do this without checking with our police, we will stop
breaking
calling
the
you.
law. They're stealing, the car is being stolen.
Well, that stealing would go to intent. You have to,
No,
you have to have an intent to steal.
Ma'am, Susie?
They need to, they can't just remove the cars. Yes, that is.
They're breaking the law. They're stealing.
It's not.
It's carjacking.
Yeah, but outside of the scenario of a no parking sign or a confusion, I understand, and we can all go into the grave. There's only one attorney, so I don't want to pretend to know the law. But if I would ask Mrs. Burns to please consider that it has occurred in the past. There have never been criminal charges. If there is a reasonable expectation that this business has an existing contract with the city to tow vehicles, and they make the argument that no police officer was available and they were directed to remove a vehicle when there was a sign, you cannot charge them criminally. You can deal with it contractually, but you cannot go and say you just stole a vehicle.
Without a
That would
police
be-
officer's,
that
without a
would
police
be-
officer's
That would be
direction.
a civil issue. I think the way to
It would be
really
a civil
address this is to really mandate the requirements of police and firemen.
time.
And
Yes,
then they're on notice that regardless if they see a sign or regardless if a citizen calls them and says, the car's 1 inch blocking my driveway or whatever the scenario is, if we put them on notice that they need to have police
Presence.
approval, or else.
What's
and, you know,
the
we can
else?
talk about
What's the else? And that's what I'm arguing. This is the else, because that's Councilman Love's whole argument that we should make sure that only police can direct the target. And I think it's been reinforced. But the or else is what this ordinance is about. The or else is we can't charge you criminally. We don't want to spend time dealing with this civilly or in civil court. So if this practice continues, we have other options. As of right now, we do not have other options. That is the or else, because that is a very key term that our attorney used. If this practice, talking about inches, continues, there is an or else. You can continue the contract, operate in good faith. If you do not operate in good faith, with the direction of the governing body, the legislative and administration together, we will choose another option. That is all.
Today, someone other than the city tower tows a car off of the street unauthorized. Where would they stand?
The tower is responsible. So the court, anyone could stop a tow company and say, take this car. Just like anybody could stop a cop and say, ticket this car. It is up to the cop to say, no, I'm not ticketing it because you're upset at it.
Right, so forgetting about the fact of a specific tower and a specific contract, I'm not even talking about that. Any tow company which removes a vehicle without official authorization, minimally shouldn't be able to charge for it.
Yes.
Aside from the fact that it might be criminal or whatever, but minimally, you shouldn't be able to charge anything for that.
We agree 100%. The administration and myself agree. But what we are discussing presently, and we agree, I agree with that point. What we're discussing is if there's only one option and the particular business.
No, my point is, here we have a theoretical price list.
Yes.
Of doing business in Passaic, personal business.
Yes.
It can also be used for city business.
Yes.
It should also say that you can't charge anything if the car isn't legally moved.
Agreed. I agree.
And it's nothing to do with the fact of a particular vendor or whatever. This is a generic price list. That's a generic statement that all these prices are void if the car isn't being legally moved.
Agreed. I believe we had shared that we agree that should be added.
Yes.
But I'm saying it's not relevant to the other conversation.
No. When I go back to the conversation is the intent of what we're trying to deal with, but because we can discuss all potential scenarios. I want to make clear, I agree with the council in every addition. But the intent here for us is to ensure that anyone who's doing business with the city understands that there is an expectation in terms of the service that is provided. I admit, I believe towing should be a last resort. The fees are exorbitant. We have a responsibility to set those. They have a responsibility to adhere to them. And when they do not, there must be an or else. And presently, we do not have an or else, or the or else that we present that we have has not been effective over the years because they have been able to continue to circumvent the or else.
Councilwoman Mellon.
And Susie, this is maybe something, I don't know if it's doable. Also, if we have, let's say, someone that we're doing business with, but they do not adhere, is there a penalty? Saying, well, guess what? Next time we have an RFP out, you will not be allowed to participate.
This would provide us to say we're not using them as an option anymore. It would
Is that
direct
because
the
you're
police
in
and hold
breach
the
of
police
contract?
accountable.
In breach of contract, you're not following contract, you will not be allowed to participate.
And
You will not be part of the
Also
pool.
explore the language about, there being no charges.
That's key.
Yeah,
Yes.
putting that into the ordinance, saying if you don't get the police,
Follow the proper process.
Right, so it's to zero.
You can't charge.
That would be very important. And also hold our police accountable to say, if we have constituents who say my car was consistently towed and the charges continue, to say, why did you continue to call this particular agency or group when we specifically directed you on how to approach these situations? If individuals act in good faith, they will continue to be used. But this does give us the option, and I believe the councilman's suggestion of no charges, and they must be open on the weekend. All should be added together to this. But the message of, I believe, to anyone who wants to do business with the city of Passaic is the service you provide is important. How you treat our residents and how you operate in general will directly impact whether or not we continue to do business with you.
Councilman Monk.
Yeah, I just want to point out, and just curious how this works. As I'm reading the ordinance of people have private property, like whether it's a restaurant, whatever it is, they post a sign. It says here that the sign has to say what the fees are if someone's car is towed. Based on this ordinance, where it says all property owners or motorists who require the service of a private towing company shall pay not to exceed the following fees. So then we pass this ordinance. Every sign in every parking lot in the city of Passaic, they have to change just putting it out there.
The ordinance.
They need to be notified
Mhm.
that those signs need to be changed to the fees there need to tie in with this ordinance.
And
That's
if
all.
they're not changed, it becomes
Another problem.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they're not putting the fees on now. So it might be a good opportunity to tell them to put the fee on.
Yes, because they're not.
It
The
says
ordinance
here
is
that it must
listed,
be. It
Yes,
says
we
it.
know it
but the
must.
fees are not listed.
And it's, I don't know how you got on a 36-inch by 36-inch sign, all these fees here. I mean, if it's a roll-up, if it's a bus, if it's a motorcycle, they have to post every one of these fees on that sign, based how this is written.
Are you serious?
Yes.
That's not
That's what
possible.
it says.
But it's not
10-point type.
possible.
It says all property owners or motorists who require the service of a private towing company shall pay not to exceed the following fees. And the ordinance here says, post the person here, there is posted 36 inches by 36 inches, and it has to say what the fees are, which means
Well,
that
since
you have to, if Dunkin'
Councilman,
Donuts.
I don't know if it says you have to list each individual fees. You must say what the fees are. That interpretation, and I would argue that would be up for the attorney, because posting what the fees are and posting every exact fee for every scenario may be different. So if you were to say, and again, I'll leave it for the attorney, if you were to say you will have to pay towing fees for cars, motorcycles, or whatever vehicle that is illegally posted, that might be covered, that may not. I would leave that for the attorney's interpretation, but it does not read verbatim. Forgive me, it does not read verbatim that you must list the amount that will be charged each one. If
Susie, I'm sorry, please.
We can refer back to, the posting would be sufficient if it says you're going to be charged the fees in accordance with.
Okay, so.
Without giving each fee?
Yeah.
With
Okay,
ordinance, citing the ordinance
citing,
number
which is
and.
what's.
If I may, the ordinance says in B2D, okay, 2 says that it has to be posted a 36-inch by 36-inch high sign, and it has to say the purpose, the name and address and telephone number of the towing company that will perform the towing, and D is the charges for the towing and storage of towed motor vehicles. So the ordinance clearly says you need to list the charges for the towing, which would have to specify each vehicle here, and the storage of the towed motor vehicles. Now, we could change this ordinance. We could change this ordinance also, but this has to work together.
But I would say that, Councilman, you said it would have to list each vehicle. That's not what the ordinance reads. That you have to list each vehicle.
This is the charges.
The charges. So the charges can be interpreted as, these are the fees that towing, and that's what I'm saying, unless specifically written that every single charge for every kind of vehicle must be listed, then it is up for interpretation. As long as we are within the law, then the requirement can be as much or to the point where it's covered by the ordinance. That would be up to us. Unless the ordinance reads specifically, you must list the exact charge for each vehicle and the cost.
Mayor, I'm going to, forgive me, sir, I think that this body must yield to the opinion of the attorney.
Yes, but if we're going on the opinion of the attorney, then the same interpretation that the councilman has and I have both go to the side, and then the attorney alone, who is the law, would determine that.
So,
If that's what you're
ma'am, if I may, we all know where we want to go, right? We know that we need a sign that says no parking and you'll be towed by if you do. What language can we put in this ordinance? Can we add or delete that will allow us not to have any question about whether or not the myriad of offenses be listed? Can we make reference?
We can craft a modification that says the notification will direct people to the ordinance. And I can work out.
So using the language that we have now, how would that work? Does it need to? Do we need to take out?
That's not a substantial change, but I'm comfortable that that we can, under this language, refer to the ordinance itself and the signage, but we can kind of further work on the language to this ordinance to state.
Well, not if we pass it, we can't.
Well, pass it and then
Make amendments.
clarify it because I'm comfortable with the way it is now.
How are you clarifying an ordinance?
It's the changes
Well,
to
you're
minimis.
stating that you want to, you're looking for specific language.
What I'm
stating
looking
that.
to is to make sure that we're perfectly legal with just putting up that sign without having to detail all of these little charges. All these charges. They're not-
Council President, it's a different ordinance number. So 297-6 is 297-5. We'd have to modify as well. We do this in the future, modify 297-6. Which we can do in the future. Again,
27-9-.
it's 29 dash, it's not in this ordinance. This trespass is a different ordinance that needs to be addressed regarding the signage.
Which is a different
A
ordinance.
different ordinance, which
Yes.
we've done at a different
It doesn't
time.
have to do with
Right.
this one.
We get to just amend this ordinance to say that charges, the signage just has to reference the ordinance, whatever it is.
Yes.
And be done with it.
But as to the attorney, the language includes it, but yours makes it clear, but it has nothing to do with passing this one.
Nothing to do with this ordinance, correct. There's nothing to do with this ordinance. Just that by passing this ordinance, it makes this ordinance a problem because every sign out there in every parking lot will not be in compliance.
But the attorney's opinion, her legal opinion was that they are in compliance.
Oh,
When the request is made, how can we make it a more perfect interpretation of the law? Not whether this fits, but the attorney's legal opinion when asked, specifically her retort was, yes, I am comfortable because of how it states that we simply have to notify that there are charges. It does not require us in any way to list the exact charges.
I understand. So in other words, if I just may, so you're saying that what it says on the ordinance here, 27-6, you need to post the charges for the towing and storage of towed vehicles that they do not need to list.
No, each and every charge, yes.
Okay.
Forgive me for phrasing this to you, but that is on the record, right? Because clearly if we are asked in terms of the basis for this, we need to be able to say with perfect, that this was the motivation, this was how we got there, that all the fees would not have to be charged.
Listed on the sign.
Correct, but made reference to, and that's based on the attorney's opinion given, okay. We're good? What else do we have on this? Okay.
Except
My
for me, just Council
understanding-
President, one last thing, I hope. Do we need to notify, do we need to notify every property owner that has a sign up that they need to make modifications to their signs?
If we choose to add that, yes.
No, with passing this ordinance tonight, right now, you pull into Dunkin' Donuts, there's big signs, oh, if you leave your car unauthorized, a $350 fee.
Not if you accept the attorney's legal opinion that it is covered in the existing ordinance. If
No,
the
but
legal-
it can't be, because they say a fee, it says $350 if you're towed. That's not, they need
Oh,
to
you're
change
talking
the
about,
sign.
that goes in the paper, that's public notice, right?
That's the notice required, not individual notice. The notice is based on the public notice and the ordinance being posted that the city clerk has to post by law.
That's
our notice
I see,
That's
okay,
the process.
okay, fine, okay,
by law.
good,
Again, I don't want to.
fine.
I know there's been a lot of
No, no,
people
no,
talking.
no.
Okay.
I'll defer to the
Fine.
attorney.
Okay, that's enough, okay.
Is there anyone else who has any additional thoughts or comments that he or she would like to make?
I think
With the council's permission, we have before us proposed ordinance 2392-23. The agreement, from what I understand, and please correct me, is that this ordinance will be passed tonight, and at our next meeting for first reading, there will be an additional ordinance which will deal with the topic of weekends, electronics, etc. And that will be at our May 11th meeting for introduction. Is there anyone who has an issue with any of this so far? That being the case, is there a maker of the
Council
motion
President,
to accept?
Council President, excuse me, we need to close the
We
public
better
portion.
close public session first. Is there a
Close the
motion?
public portion.
Second.
Motion and second to close public.
Councilman Monk,
Yes.
Councilman Love,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mello,
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz,
Yes.
Councilman Garcia.
Yes.
And Council President Shield.
Yes, thank you. On the ordinance, is there a maker, please?
So move.
Second.
Motion and second.
Councilman Monk,
Yes.
Councilman Love,
Yes.
Councilman Mello,
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz,
Yes.
Councilman Garcia,
Yes.
and Council President Shear.
Yes, the ordinance passes. Number 2, proposed ordinance 2393-23, an ordinance amending Chapter 29, Land Development Procedures, Article 4, Payment in lieu of parking, Section 29-56.2, PIP fees for off-track parking improvements of the Code of the City of Passaic, New Jersey, to include electric vehicle parking spaces. Is there a motion, please, to open public?
So move it, Council President.
Second.
Motion and second to open. Roll call to open, please.
Councilman Monk,
Yes.
Councilman Love,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mello,
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz,
Yes.
Councilman Garcia,
Yes.
and Council President Shear.
Yes, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. At this time, the council will be contemplating proposed ordinance 2393-23. Is there anyone who would like to address the council at this time on this ordinance and this ordinance only? If you do want to speak to this ordinance, we respectfully ask that you call us, please, at 929-436-2866. Enter meeting ID number 898-9261-2341 and press 9. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone on the line?
No, sir, not at the moment.
In that case,
Oh, now someone just put their hand up. I believe it's Mr. Wolf.
Hi, thank you. Do you hear me?
Yes, can we have your name and address, please, sir?
Yes, my name is Yosef Wolf. I live at 71 Spring Street in Passaic. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
I just want to ask the council, I know this is like mentioned briefly a lot of times. Right now, there's a payment in lieu of parking that can be adopted by the city if somebody's plans are approved by the planning board, by the zoning board, and it's $5,000. Right now, we have, the mayor pointed out that he's adding 50 parking spots. He's not adding, the administration's adding 50 parking spots in Benson Court. Over there, all the land is already owned. It already was a parking lot with drainage. They have to add more drainage, and over there it's costing closer to $10,000 for each additional parking spot. By the new garage across the street from Passaic, if you do the math, it comes out to approximately $40,000 per parking spot. And I want to ask on 2 points specifically. First of all, the payment in lieu of parking does not at all come close to what the cost of parking is. That's just construction, and then you have to have maintenance. It's not nothing near reality. And the payment is to the city. When someone has, one of my neighbors, I'm not going to say how close they are to my house, but one of my neighbors, he has a house and he has 7 cars based out of his house. And he only has room for 1 car in front of his house. He puts tremendous stress on the entire neighborhood. And I'm asking the city council, maybe it's time to look at this, not just as electric cars. If someone's paying payment in lieu of tax of parking,
Mr. Wolf, I'm going to ask you to please stay on the ordinance.
My question is, can this be explored in general, how the payments to the city are addressing an issue that someone is putting a stress on their neighborhood, and the cost doesn't even equal up to the cost of the parking?
Mr. Wolf, I need to direct you to the ordinance.
Okay. The city's proposing to change electric vehicles to $7,500. My question is, does this system encourage the planning board to accidentally think that the missing parking spot is somehow compensated for when it's not compensated to the neighbors?
You'll forgive me, please, sir.
Okay, that's my point. You can take it as you want. That's my point. Thank you.
For anyone on this council or the administration present to assume what the board may or may not think and wish to proceed with. I don't think that is reasonable. I would ask you to stick to the facts of the case of the ordinance, and please continue.
Okay,
for as long
the
as you like.
$7,500 for an electric vehicle, how does it address the stress on the actual people living in the vicinity of this project, of the proposed theoretical project? And how does it actually meet the cost that the city says they will compensate with additional parking? How does it come even near the actual cost for constructing a parking spot? So what is this about?
Mr. Fernandez, can you help us understand how does this compensate?
So there's a lot of theoretical, so I'm going to try to answer the question as best possible based on the facts, right? So right now, a regular spot is 5,000. There was no allocation for an electric vehicle. The cost of the charging stations are clearly more than a spot that doesn't need it. So adding an additional $1,500 per spot, when you ultimately multiply that by the multiple spots and the cost of the station, that all goes into a parking trust account. So by law, the reason we were able to do the payment in lieu of parking, it's based on state law, that is to help us as a city to create more parking, to maintain existing parking, to provide amenities that are specific, like meters and things of that nature. So the fund is not, as an example, Main Avenue, right? There's no way that those buildings that exist can provide parking. They've been there hundreds since the city started, right? But you want to redevelop the Main Avenue and make it look better. So they can't, the developer themselves within their own parcel, because the building is being retrofitted, is 100% of the lot, right? We have to have an alternative. And how do we do that? Well, we have to maintain, let's say, the center islands, right? That costs money. But if we just gave the variance, because there's enough there for the boards to provide a variance because they're existing buildings, right? Now what do? We just grant the variance, we do nothing. The lots now come out of the taxpayers' money and the developers pay nothing, right? In this case, they would pay. So it's an average of all the projects throughout the city and how we use that money to balance parking in many different ways. For example, the money we get can be used, if it wasn't for the great work of the mayor and our state representatives, right, to get that parking deck, we would have had to bond for it, the parking authority. Using this money that allows us to put the down payment for that bond and not cost additional taxpayer dollars for bonding for that deck. So there's multitude of reasons, and we did look around, not just the cost of a parking spot, but all types of parking spots, as well as our surrounding communities and what the charges were when this ordinance was originally done. But to get to the council president and to sum it up, this is specifically to add $7,500 for electric vehicle parking that was not required before because the state required us to have mandated that every project, including our own, required electric vehicle parking. So this ordinance specifically just does that. I believe I answered his questions. And
So in fact, the rationale for this is state direction and requirement?
Yes, the electric vehicle component, yes. Yes, the specific request, because the state of New Jersey required every municipality to mandate in all of their own projects and development projects that a percentage of those parking spaces must be electric vehicle or make ready spaces for electric vehicle. And our ordinance was silent on it. So we added it to make sure that the city would not be left if a variance was granted for one of these spaces.
Can I ask a ridiculous question? Okay. Who pays for the electricity?
So depending on the project, the property owner, if it's their property, that property owner would pay for it. If it's a city property, the city would, but we get the money back through meter fees and things like that.
Okay. I've always wondered about that. Is there anyone else who would like to address the council on this ordinance and this ordinance only? Seeing no hands, is there a motion to close public hearing?
So move it, Council.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Monk?
Yes.
Councilman Love?
Yes.
Councilwoman Mello,
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz.
Yes.
Councilman Garcia.
Yes.
And Council President Scher.
Yes, thank you. On the ordinance, is there a maker
So
of the
move it.
ordinance?
Second.
Motion and second. Roll call, please.
Councilman Monk,
Yes.
Councilman Love,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mello,
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz.
Yes.
Councilman Garcia.
Yes.
And Council President Scher.
Yes, thank you. The ordinance is passed. Next, please, proposed ordinance 2394-23, an ordinance amending the designation of restricted parking for disabled persons by New Jersey license plate numbers. Is there a motion, please, to open
So
public
moved.
hearing? Motion
Second.
and second. Thank you. Roll call.
Councilman Monk,
Yes.
Councilman Love,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mello.
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz.
Yes.
Councilman Garcia.
Yes.
And Council President Scher.
Yes, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, the council will be contemplating proposed ordinance 2394-23. If anyone would like to speak to us and give us your thoughts, we'd be most appreciative. You can reach us, if you don't already have the number, at 929-436-2866, meeting ID number 898-9261-2341, press 9. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone on the line?
No, sir.
Very good. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the council?
Seeing no hands, I move to close the public portion.
Second.
Motion and second to close public.
Councilman Monk,
Yes.
Councilman Love.
Yes.
Councilwoman Mello.
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz.
Yes.
Councilman Garcia.
Yes.
And Council President Scher.
Yes, thank you. On the ordinance, please.
So move.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilman Monk,
Yes.
Councilman Love,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mello.
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz.
Yes.
Councilman Garcia.
Yes.
And Council President Scher.
Yes, thank you. That is the conclusion of ordinances. We're up to communication, Roman numeral 9. Are there any questions on the 3 items under communication? Seeing no lights, is there a motion,
So
please, to
moved.
accept?
Sorry.
Please, on the contrary, is there a second? Motion and second. Roll call, please, on 4 through 6.
Councilman Monk,
Yes.
Councilman Love,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mello.
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz.
Yes.
Councilman Garcia.
Yes.
And Council President Scher.
Yes, thank you. Under matters considered routine in nature, items 6A through 16, are there any issues with or further clarity needed? Seeing no lights at this time, is there a motion, please, to accept?
So move.
There is a move. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Motion and second. Roll call, please.
Councilman Monk,
Yes.
Councilman Love,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mello.
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz.
Yes.
Councilman Garcia.
Yes.
And Council President Scher.
Yes, thank you. Resolution authorizing closed executive session. Susie, do we need?
No, Council President.
Thank you. Mr. Fernandez? Mr. Mayor, sir?
None at this time, Council
Members of
President.
the council? Very good. Why don't we put 17 aside? On items 18 through 25, are there any questions, please? Councilman Love.
I just wanted to let administration know on 18, I see that this company is in Dallas, Texas. So if you guys need anybody to go down and check out to make sure everything's all right, I'm volunteering.
Happens the Dallas Cowboys play there.
So, yes, just, I might catch a game while I'm there, but just let me know. Council President, I'm done.
All right. Are there any other?
I'm a team.
That wasn't exactly a question.
I'm a team player. It was just, offering my services.
Councilman, you proved that time and time again, especially when it comes to your love of sports. If there are no questions on 18 through 25, is there a motion, please, to accept it? 18 through 25.
So moved.
Motion
Second.
and second. Roll call, please.
Councilman Monk,
Yes.
Councilman Love,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mello.
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz.
Yes.
Councilman Garcia.
Yes.
And Council President Scher.
Yes, thank you. Number 26, ordinance amending the designation of restricted parking for disabled persons by New Jersey license plate number. Is there a motion to accept for set down for second and final reading at our meeting of May 11?
So moved.
Motion
Second.
and second. Roll call, please.
Councilman Monk,
Yes.
Councilman Love,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mello.
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz.
Yes.
Councilman Garcia.
Yes.
And Council President Scher.
Yes, thank you very much. Before going into payment of bills, I failed on behalf of the council to acknowledge the election of our 3 colleagues on the school board, and we wish them good health and everything Good. Payment of bills. Are there any questions on the bills? Hearing none, is there a motion to accept the bills,
So
please?
move it.
There is a motion,
Second.
and there is a second. Roll call, please, on the bills.
Councilman Monk,
Yes.
Councilman Love,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mello,
Yes.
Councilman Short,
Yes.
Councilman Garcia,
Yes.
Council President Sher.
Yes, thank you. Administrators report. Mr. Mayor.
I will take a point of privilege to remind the public that on May 9th, we have a municipal election. All those that are watching, I encourage you to participate in the municipal election. Since I am not running, I do not have any issue with sharing that there are members of this city council who are our council president, who is our assemblyman, Councilwoman Mello, Councilman Monk. We have a council president Sher, Councilwoman Tanya Mello, and Councilman Monk. As many of you have seen, the dedication and devotion of these individuals to the seriousness of this work. My specific highlighting of their work has nothing to do with us always getting along smoothly, but the truth is, and I say this as I've always said it, I have never worked with a governing body that I believe so wholeheartedly cares about this community, cares about the work that they're doing, and takes it so serious. I ask you all to participate in this election. I'm walking a very, very sensitive line here. I'm not specifically telling you who to vote for. I am just telling you that I believe that our council president, Gary Sher, our councilwoman, Tanya Mello, our councilman, Hyde Monk, and all those associated with them genuinely care about this community. They take it serious. They come to meetings. They read their agendas. They consider the law. They're open to suggestions. And I believe that the very success of this city, past, present, and future, has been directly impacted by their devotion and their commitment working along their colleagues on this dais. That is the extent of my last report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for the kindness of your remarks, sir. There being no other business before us on our agenda, is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion and second. Roll call to adjourn, please.
Councilman Monk,
Yes.
Councilman Love,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mello,
Yes.
Councilman Short,
Yes.
Councilman Garcia,
Yes.
and Council President Sher.
Yes, thank you.
Wow. Government at its